should I get us launched?
If you'd like to.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to bring together a whole variety of things that I've handed out to you already. Namely, some of the ideas about what teachers impressed me going through school, because I kept saying in various letters to the editor, to you all, examine what it is you felt helped you when you were in school. And you know there were some teachers you felt were a big help, and others who, well, they survived and you did, and then there were others. And I wanted to focus on what it is that goes on in school that has a positive outcome, because it's clear that we have a huge amount of negative outcome. For reasons I'm not altogether sure, and I can only suspect. And so what I gave you last week gave you sort of, I think it was 6 or 8 ideas that, to me, made a big difference. They were largely in math, because I was lucky in the 6 years I attended Groton School, small classes, all the non-public benefits. But nevertheless, not all of the teachers were good teachers, and I didn't learn from all of them the things I thought I should have. But the whole business of a turnaround, where you're given a problem that sounds impossible and all of a sudden it's trivial, is, I think, something that is bait for young kids. Now, how it applies here in Newburyport and Salisbury and Amesbury, I have kids which from October until May, end of May, beginning of June, I work with. And some of them are refugees from this school system. And some of them are at Salisbury. Some of them are down at the charter school and disgruntled about the charter school. So it's not that there's some obvious big plus. And I do math as opposed to a lot of other things. But I thought that there were some things, that articles that really might help at how we look at it. The batch that I handed out last week tended to show that the rules that are passed down by legislatures and either in Massachusetts or the national thing are horrible. And the article that talks about, that I handed out the other week, talks about 2 schools in Massachusetts that are in impoverished areas, and they didn't meet the criteria, so they're $600,000 yanked from them. I don't figure how that can be. That's outrageous. I mean, what would you do if $600,000 was yanked from you?
Well, I'll tell you what we did do.
Yeah, you let people go, and you know, the place doesn't function the way the town thinks it ought to function. So you know, you have to deal with MCAS, and you have to deal with No Child Gets Ahead. Fine, but how do you teach despite that is my question. And I think that we're lucky in our superintendent that he has some desire and goal to go beyond what those things are talking about. So the thing that hit me, the New Yorker article, which I think I've given to all of you, is a wonderful article. It's about college, but I think it pertains all the way down to the 1st grade. Why do you learn certain things? And the interesting test for me, they had 3 different kinds of reasons why you go to college. One of them is you get a general education, and college really is a 4-year-long intelligence test in which you have to demonstrate you can get along with people, you can understand a variety of topics, and maybe you sort out which one you're best at, or it's sort of general education. The second version was general education. Didn't make any difference what you're going into, you want to have that background. And the third one is pre-professional stuff. And I just talked to my wife's great niece up in New Hampshire, who's living in my summer house, and she's taking a physics course at UNH, and she wants to be a physical therapist and get a PhD, and that's all she's going to do. 4 years of that, and whatever it is. I don't think it's a terrific education myself. And I don't think that's what ought to happen in our public schools lower down. You want general education. You want readers and writers. So I thought that while it is about college, I gave you this article because it does discuss, what do you need to take away from school, be it high school or whatever, to deal with life? Is it just a technical thing, how to set your computer up? I don't think that's satisfactory myself, but at least the issues are there. The other thing that I've got my Vygotsky book out off the shelf in the basement. I'd never read this reader, but it has, I think, the appropriate article. It was mentioned in the Globe, it's June 12th. I don't know whether you saw it or not. Self-control in childhood. It's talking about kids getting hold of themselves and being able to do a course of sprouts without obvious rewards coming. And I'm really seeing that with first and second and third graders I work with. That some of them who are a real pain in the butt, when you start out with them, all of a sudden they start seeing the patterns and enjoying it. And I had one little girl say to me, "Are we going to do it in the summer?" Oh my God, you've made my day, my week, my year. But it's really interesting to me that here this man died in 1934, but his ideas are coming forward. I don't think that Newburyport should necessarily adopt the whatever it is called, mind control or something.
I don't think
tools. Something about
in
tools.
general is not.
Somebody lose their investment working on me.
Yeah, me too. But I thought it seemed to me that what I have is a child who doesn't know, having trouble in the third grade, second grade, whatever she's in, with multiplication table, and I'm teaching her how to count. Count by twos, count by threes, count by fours, count by five, count by nines, and then write that all out in a big grid, and oh my God, there's the multiplication table. And she'd never realized just addition with most of it thrown away. But it made sense to her, and now she wants to recite it to me every 2 minutes. So I see some of this business that Vygotsky is talking about, that if early on, first grade, second grade, you can get kids to see that the school offers them something that all of a sudden gives them control, empowers them, and then they're willing to be patient and sit and be quiet, which is what I'll do right now. Thank you for listening.
I think your ideas are very much in tune with a lot of the things that we have been talking around and bringing more and more into focus as we move forward in it. I think our discussions around 21st century learning, for example, are not because it's the latest craze and the latest flavor of the month and the latest buzzword that you can throw at people that everybody says, yeah, like motherhood and apple pie, this should be good. But they really don't understand what it means. I think it really is talking about a lot of these skills. Critical thinking, for example. I thoroughly enjoyed the partnership grant celebration that the EBC had last week. And one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much was there was a kindergarten teacher and a and a first grade teacher that were talking about some of the projects that they did. And as I began talking to the teacher, what I saw is that they were working on teaching the most sophisticated thinking skills to those kids. They were teaching them to be critical thinkers in kindergarten, to make appropriate choices in kindergarten, to evaluate whether a source of material is good or bad in kindergarten. They were teaching them to be creative, to put ideas together in new ways in the first grade. That is what 21st century learning is all about. It's about critical thinking. It's about creative thinking. It's about collaboration, which guess what? When you get into the real world, the large corporations are saying, this is what we need. We need people who can communicate, who can collaborate, who are critical thinkers, who are creative. And when we take a look at what might be our competitive advantage versus other countries in education, creativity and evaluation of ideas and working with ideas is where the future lies for us as a country. So I think as you talk about this and empowering children to take some amount of control over their own learning by letting their learning be led by their own questions, I think is fabulous. And I think we're beginning to see some of that. We're beginning to see some of that in pockets of excellence in our schools. And I just hope that the rest of the teachers get bitten by the bug and pick up on some of these ideas that were being done.
Yeah, I think kindergarten and first grade teachers are the first ones to say that the clicking happens at different paces, like when the light bulb goes off. You know what I mean? You know when someone gets that code and they break the code and they start to read, and when you see that, it is the most exciting thing as a teacher you can see. But on the same scope, I hear you in terms of, for those kids who get it, and they might get it, you've mentioned before in terms of the ones who are just sitting there and they're doing the stuff and they might be bored, you know? I think addressing that is a different problem. It's something that we do need to work on. I don't want to, like, you know, talented and gifted sets off like alarms in communities when you start talking about that, but there's definitely something we need to address in that arena to deal with that. But I think the early intervention work is crucial. We're starting to bring that to the forefront. We have a lot of work to do there. But if we make even just baby steps in that area, I think if we get them there, you're right, they can move forward feeling a little bit more in control and not feeling left behind either. I mean, think about that child who sees other kids walking out of first grade or walking out of kindergarten even. A lot of kindergartners walk out and they already know how to read. You know, and there you've got that kid who wants to, but for some reason it's not clicking, and they might already feel, oh man, I'm behind. You know, they're pretty with it when they're that age. They see, they notice everything. So I think the work that the kindergarten ad hoc committee did and the work that Dr. Kerbel is, you know, it all stems from above, and I think that we're moving in the right direction, but we have a long way to go. We do.
May I respond? Oh, sorry. The thing that impressed me with Vygotsky, that's the way I pronounce it, I don't know, never heard anybody say it, is that in his time they were comparing the learning of chimpanzees and other primates with human beings. And he comes down very strongly on the importance of language. And the thing that I saw in the few times I've been in public school classrooms or tried to conduct them myself was that the diversity was so wide that you couldn't talk and expect more than a small fraction of your kids to understand what you were talking about. You might as well be speaking Russian or German or something else because they don't get it. And how important it is for a child to be able to take the idea that you're giving him or her and feed it back to you in his or her words. That it puts that child in a new place. And I think that's what I experience doing my lessons over at the Boys and Girls Club. They get to talk to me. And I tell them, if I ask, is 17 prime? Now I know it's prime. They say, yes it is. They get their, I said, I don't believe it. Argue it. So then they have to put into words what it is that makes them convinced that 17 is a prime number. And they have to go through the argument.
Yeah, Zeb, if you've ever seen guided reading in a real low income district, okay, where you've got kids who don't speak, there's like, you'll have kids that have, they don't speak a lick of English, okay?
Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up is this is what we're doing in our district, our literacy initiative. By the end of kindergarten, because they're writing, they're reading, they're talking about it, okay? By the end of the year, many of these children who never spoke a lick of English are walking out and they're writing, they're communicating with their teachers. It's amazing. And the great thing about Newburyport is our teachers are all hooked into this. They're enthusiastic. they've been doing it now for quite some time. We've got the supports in place. We can always use more supports, but the supports that we have in place are really providing them, I think, with a strong sense of, like, they have someone to go to if they need help with a method or with modeling or something like that. And you should see the work these kids do. And it translates into math as well, because it's all language-based, you know what I mean? Don't just tell me that 2 + 2 = 4. How did you get there?
Right.
You know?
Right.
I'm sorry I'm babbling, but it's...
Yeah, can I see your, oh, sure. All right, I won't, no monkey business. No. So, I had a chance to study by Godsky when I was in grad school, but when I went through literacy coaching and stuff like that, we used his work. And what Vygotsky was saying, and you get this in coaching and everything else, he calls it zone of proximal development. Sounds very intelligent, all right? But what he was saying is that you can't be so far, so ahead of a student that's outside their proximity. You have to learn, it's too ahead of them. And if it's too close to them, it's too easy. So what you try to do is you make them stretch just far enough where it's in their reach. Okay, and so if that happened all the time with every kid and every teacher, and teachers had the awareness that that was happening, that'd be terrific. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what Stephanie was saying about, you know, and what teachers are doing in literacy.
Early on.
Early on, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening, you know, in mathematics. The professional development that Angela put together, and we had this guy, this gentleman, Andrew Chin from MIT.
This guy, that
guy, yeah. Many times, not you slang. So,
It's too early.
what he's doing with teachers is he's teaching them about what, you know, to understand the zone of proximal development. You don't think students can learn that? Well, if you stretch it, they can, and that's what you're saying.
I mean, I have, I'll just be really brief, because I've been very interested both from my perspective on the school committee and public schools, and my experience teaching as a teacher in mostly private schools, teaching Montessori style. And, you know, I'm very interested, and was interested in the 7 years I taught in Montessori classrooms, in the sort of the creation of this multi-age, multidisciplinary, cross-cultural learning community, where suddenly, when you get to grasp an idea, it really matters that your neighbor needs a little bit of help figuring how to get on that idea. And if you have ever, I don't know if you've ever had the chance to walk into a Montessori classroom, first, second, third grade class, lower L classroom, I would encourage you to do it. Do it near you can do it in February or March.
I've done it in the 5th and 6th grade.
And what you'll see is that the kids walk in the morning, and whatever their morning ceremony is, they do, and then they go right to work. And the teachers don't say, so-and-so do this, so-and-so do this. They go out, they take their work out, and whether it's 45 minutes of math work that they feel like they need to do, or their writing work, they're very self-directed. And part of that, I think, it's a different philosophy. I've never been convinced that we can't be doing more of that stuff here in public schools, but there is that magic. It can happen. I've seen it in public school classrooms as well. The kids are excited to learn. They're jazzed.
We've had this conversation before in terms of harking back further to when Newburyport was known to be on the vanguard of education. I think that was in the turn of the 19th century. We had sort of timbered. No, of course I'm being facetious, but we were working very closely with the Lancastrian system, and that Montessori, principle of the students teaching other students and engaged and for the love of learning worked well, and then it fell out of fashion nationally, and so we sort of went with the flow and discounted it. And it's many times going back and studying that, you look at it and you say, oh, you really wish we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because that's that group when we were talking about when Stephanie was discussing, and as is always the case when we're looking at kindergarten, but then also, as Mr. Hopping will always say, trying to engage those students who lose interest. And oftentimes that's a sort of, what is it, cognitive dissonance that Aesop calls sour grapes. You can't do it, it's not easy. You see other students who are, find it more facility with it, and you sort of lose that interest. And then also, I'm trying to remember when it was a great Newsweek article that did an analysis and an evaluation, when that's about the time where students stop asking questions because they become a little self-conscious. But when those groups are peer-to-peer discussion groups, if it's all in the casting, so it would have to be those students. But it's almost like it's an opportunity, say if Newburyport wanted to be known once again, to sort of spawn teachers. We don't have teachers clubs anymore, we have future teachers. That type of thing where the president has called for that. I mean, it's sort of like this synergy that, I know we have 2 minutes left, and I'm just hoping.
Well, what you said just dovetails, I think, with the presentation.
Right. So hopefully there's going to be conversation, and I don't know what will happen through the summer months. I know I'm really excited about the presentation.
Well, nobody ended this evening, or Cheryl was going to really hurt me, so.
I did tell him that I was going to hurt him. I didn't know what our schedule was for the summer.
But, those opportunities to engage the community and perhaps more conversation. And so there's not an opportunity to discuss some of that, but I'll send out electronic communication to one and all, and you can discuss it. Because there's a date in mind. And I think these things are so productive, conversation leading to behavior, as in its archaic term.
Good. We have just enough time for Ken, I think, to turn the camera around. Let's start our meeting. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting, the Newburyport School Committee for Monday, June 20th, to order. Mrs. Kennedy, would you call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Sweeney? Mr. Menon?
Here.
Mayor Holliday is absent. Ms. Weaver?
Present.
Mr. Decanter?
Here.
Mr. Keon?
Here. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I just wanted to let the school committee know that we're going to rearrange the order of the agenda slightly. We pledge a reading of the mission statement. The superintendent, the principal, and John Delaney's have some folks they'd like us to meet. We'll meet them. We will then probably do the memorandum of understanding, Gulf of Maine Institute, and probably the only other change I think we're going to make is moving more minutes to the end of the meeting. Great. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to read the mission statement of the Newburyport Public Schools. The Newburyport Public Schools are committed to the intellectual, physical, social development and engagement of every student within a culture of high expectations. For individual and group learning, our students experience rigorous academic challenge, are intellectually curious, and express themselves creatively. Our students enhance their well-being by applying knowledge and skills about nutrition, fitness, and healthy behaviors. Our schools are an inclusive and supportive community. As part of this community, our students demonstrate values of personal integrity, sensitivity, and social responsibility. Our schools partner with parents and community in significant ways to help achieve this mission. Members of our school community, teachers, parents, staff, and administration support this mission every day in every classroom, on every field of play, and every activity. I would like to, at this point, turn the meeting over to Dr. Kerbel.
Thank you, Bruce. I think if you read the paper today, this morning, and if you paid attention over the weekend, I realized that besides the Bruins championship, there was something else going on in Newburyport. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our guest to come in. Excuse me. Division III baseball state champions, the Newburyport baseball team. So, you know, we followed the Bruins. We knew that they had a drought for 35 years. Well, I believe the baseball team had a similar drought. It's been a long time since the baseball team won a state title. In fact, has never won a state title. Is that correct? All right. We had a baseball coach who was given 40 years of his life to coaching baseball in Newburyport, which is that in itself was quite an achievement. And we honored Bill, I believe, when he earned his 600th win. The baseball team did something very, very special. And it's really hard to win a state title. Okay? It's really hard to have perseverance and have that continuous drive that takes you through right to the very end. And so you had a chance to watch the game. You know that these kids are, they are fighters, they are players. They are a player's player because they work hard right to the very, very end for the community, for the coaches, and then lastly for themselves. And so we have something to learn from them, because if you watch them come off the field, those that are not playing run out to the field to greet their teammates. So they're consummate teammates, because what they do is they care about the team and less about themselves. So as a result of caring for the team, they brought home a state title. So congratulations to the coach, the coaches, and so you guys did a great job. Mike and John, would you like to say anything?
Just that I couldn't be more proud of this group of kids. More so even for the type of people that these guys are. Off the field, the way they carry themselves, the way they represent the Newburyport community, I think we all should be really proud. And one other thing too, there are a lot of people behind the scenes that work really hard for this program. And Coach Pettingill, Coach Melanfont, the other coaches really know that the parents who have been involved with these kids have been instrumental in their success. And we've also had a lot of parents to volunteer their time to go down and work on the field when we needed bodies. So I want to recognize them too for all their dedication to these kids and to our program. So I'm very proud, couldn't be happier.
Thunder, however.
That's why I wanted to go first.
Yeah. The one great thing I'll take from this is that, you know, you guys had some historic milestones, both as a team, but also coaching and individual stats and things like that. But the one great thing is they never lost their focus. And if you watch that game on Saturday, some of the plays that you guys made, thinking before you did something, where it was truly outstanding. I think that was the separation between the two teams on the field on Saturday. So congratulations for keeping that focus, and kudos to the coaches to keeping you guys happy and playing well. And it really showed on Saturday. It was an awesome event. We're very proud of you. Thank you.
Something I wanted to share with you. On the day that you guys won the championship, the superintendent was beside himself. He was so excited. He called me. I happened to be at Pioneer Field. My son was about to do a playoff game. So I got the news right away. And I told some people who were sitting in the stands at the field where he was playing. And as they would go over to the next group of people, the next group of stands, completely across Pioneer Field, each group would stand up and cheer and applaud. And that was how you knew that they had gotten the news. It was amazing. All Pioneer Field, every field, it just went completely around with people cheering and jumping up and giving each other high fives because of what you guys had done. So I'm very grateful and very appreciative. And it had a huge impact on at least, I know at least 24 kids who were playing baseball that afternoon. So your impact is going to go way beyond this season.
I'd like to just say a few words to thank you. This season was really dedicated to the 40 other varsity baseball teams that I happen to have coached. And that sounds like a ridiculous number, I understand that. But, you know, this, although it's the first state championship, so many of our teams that were really, really good baseball teams came with an eyelash of winning the state title or winning the North title or whatever. Because we were in that North sectional 9 times. We won 4 of them as a town, as a community. And we won the Eastern Mass Championship 2 of those times, which puts you 1 game away from getting into the state final. And then we were in the state final game twice. And 50% of the time we won it. Which was thanks to these gentlemen here, who had just that little tiny bit extra you can't really describe. You know, it's but as it was mentioned here by our administration, there's something to being great athletes and to be in the right place at the right time and so forth. But I don't think I've ever had a group of kids that came to practice prepared and loved practice like this team did. We've had other teams that like to come to practice and so forth, but this was really special. From the first day, that you could just tell they wanted to be here. And if you want to be here, you're going to get better. And they did their yeoman's work every single day. So kudos to them. It's not a surprise to me now. When we were 5-4, I don't know if we were expected to go 23-5. So to win those last 16 games, a little error in the paper, was a very amazing accomplishment, especially the way they won them, with a record-setting school, record-setting complete games, 23 complete games from the pitching staff, mostly from Brett Fontaine and from our captain, Ryan O'Connor, who is at Bentley College for the evening, for the next 3 evenings. They got him locked in there. They're going to let him out for the Eastern Mass All-Star game tomorrow night, but he's on orientation, and we have 4 kids that are at a senior baseball game tonight. They had a tough decision to make, come here or go to the game, and I don't know if I would have had any more difficult time making that decision if I was them, because they're playing ball, you know. But this is a special group because of the type of people there. And you know, Newburyport should really be proud of that, as well as being state champions. But they're this is a class act right here.
We did this with the track team. Just come by so we can shake your hand, give a pump fist, scroll all the way around. You hit everybody, okay? Awkward.
Whatever. Thanks, Bill. Congratulations. Good job.
Okay, there you go. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations. Congratulations. That's great. Superstar. We're trying to be a celebrity. Thank you. Congratulations. Good work. Thank you. Thank you. Very good job. Outstanding. How are you?
No, maybe I'll find that like
Isn't that the retirement life?
Yes.
I can tell you.
It must be good, because you look awful happy.
Yeah. Not as much fun as this. Good job.
Thank you. Keep my hand.
Thanks a lot. For real.
Thank you very much.
Ronnie's a good man.
Have a good summer. See you next year, okay?
He does.
I'm sure somebody will complain about how long the meetings go on. I'll take these interruptions.
I may need a spell.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Bye, Bill.
I'm special for these
Yeah.
We're ready.
We'll continue moving through our agenda. I don't think we have any other championship teams right now that are going to be coming through tonight.
Oh, the Bruins are saying?
No. They turned us down. We are going to, I'd like to just ask Mike, who's already up here, to talk to us about the memorandum of understanding at the high school. So all yours, Mike, unless Mark wants to introduce you.
Yeah, let me just, and thanks, Mike. I think the role of the high school principal is a very, very challenging one, and I really respect the work that Mike has done this year and does every day. You know, his day starts very, very early, and I know it's exciting, you get all pumped up to greet the state title champs. Then we come down and talk about the schedule.
To other stuff.
But I think that we have some, I think, really good news. We've been working at this for a long time. One of the things that we were looking at was the starting and end time for our students. Okay, and so we had a meeting with the subcommittee on negotiations. There were some parameters as we move forward, and one was to keep the schedule. And I'm just looking at my notes for a second, number 7. So one of the things that we had talked about when we last met a few months ago was the school committee was ready to see some flexibility in this schedule and left it up to the administration. Okay, but the beginning and end date for students would not change. And so the start and end time for teachers did not change either. So I think since Mike's at the table, maybe it's more appropriate to have Mike talk about the schedule at the high school than me. Mike, do you mind going through?
No, I don't. The MOU committee met starting in September through a series of student forums, working with teachers, listening to issues concerning the new schedule. A couple things became apparent early, things that could be fixed in the short term and things that needed to be looked at more long term. And one of the short-term things that came up was the 80-minute period that was in the middle of the schedule. This was, again, something that was presented at the negotiations table. It was discussed. I think it was felt that that would give people some opportunities to do some learning opportunities in the classroom with a longer period of time. But what that became was it became a block. Teachers would get into a rhythm of the day and have 3 or 4 57-minute periods, and then they go to an 80. And it threw them off. It also threw them off with their planning, because that 80-minute period rotated, and you couldn't dictate where it was going to be, so whether it was going to fit what you were doing in your unit planning, that became a problem. And teachers who should have been prepping for 2 or 3 preps really were prepping for 5. And I think that was detrimental in the long run. Also, in talking to students, especially September, October, and November, it became clear in talking to students that the 2 big issues 3 issues that they came up with was the homework issue, carrying around the books for 6 classes a day, and we worked some things out internally to help them with that. And then the third one, from their perspective, looking at it, was also the 80-minute period. So as the MOU committee made their recommendations, one of the recommendations was to go to a more even classes, as opposed to 5 57s and an 80, to try to even it out more and take away from that 80-minute period. So what you have in front of you is a tentative schedule for next year that has 5 60-minute classes, and then that lunch period, which was 80, would be chopped down to 65. I can't get it to 60 only because I've got to give a couple minutes in between the lunches so that the tables are wiped down and the lunch people can gear up and get ready for that next lunch. That's going to create some problems for them as far as the food prep and things like that, because now they have about an 8-minute time in between. That's going to get cut down to 2 minutes for one lunch and 3 minutes for another. Second lunch is usually our lightest lunch. So to go from second to third lunch, there's a 2-minute break. To go from first to second lunch, there's a 3-minute break. So, tables have to be cleaned. We were working with a teacher today who may come up with a solution to help us with some manpower in the lunchroom during that time. That is not going to take away from any class time per se. The schedule would fully rotate as opposed to a double rotation. We had periods F and G, and especially period G, 5 out of the 7 days at the end of the day. This would be fully rotational, so G can be anywhere from the first period of the day to the last period of the day. And what we were finding is that the G period teachers having that class at the end of the day every day was also not the best design from the previous schedule. So in working in concert with the teachers, taking the input from the students that we gathered, especially early in the year, we've been working on this pretty carefully since December, January. Brought Mark and the school committee in February, I believe, and we are where we are today. I think this is still a work in progress. Part of the MOU recommendations is to form another committee starting this summer and into this fall to incorporate looking at how we meet the 990 standard and whether there are things that can be done that students are currently doing and not getting any credit for. Can we start giving these students credit for some of the great things that they do outside the classroom? I know you have the GOMI people here tonight, and that's a perfect example of site-based learning that students get involved in, and they get pumped up about, and they get psyched about, but they don't get any credit for that. They don't get any really recognition for that. And I think we've got to start looking at classes and student learning opportunities beyond the 7:30 to 2:25 time frame. And that can be in a lot of different areas. You could look at that from science. You could look at it from drama. You could look at it from a number of different core areas, and link activities that students are doing now to meeting the clock hour requirement of the state. And again, that is I think a dream of ours as we really move to 21st century learning, and we're talking about bringing in technology and doing all these great things. I think we've got to start looking at, expanding the learning opportunities for our students above and beyond a time-centered schedule. And that would be the goal, to start looking at that so that we can implement some new things down the road to recognize what students are already doing. And I've also been very adamant that I really believe that community service should be a component of graduation, that students should do hours of community service throughout their high school career. And so that's another aspect of it. And then along with that, we talked today about incorporating a senior project for our seniors, which many communities already do. And that is also something that's on the table that will be discussed by this MOU committee starting in the summer and moving into next year. And we would be making recommendations to you about the 990 and the opportunities outside of the normal school day sometime during the middle of next year if we get our work done, which we should, because we are dictated to get it done.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mike?
I want to start, Mike. It's not clear in the materials that we have here. What is the time on learning that our students will have next year based on this schedule? Are we going to be at 990, are we going to be below?
We'll be what we are now. We're 1/3 over and we're 2/3 just under. And that's been dictated by students who don't take a study or over 1,000 hours. Those students that take a study for one semester are in the 970 range. And that, if you look at that compared to the previous year, we were averaging 818. So we're close. We also looked at, a couple other issues,
So the fact that we made this change in the schedule and have yet to implement the other opportunities to earn credit is not necessarily an indication that we're not reaching the 990 already. For most students.
For most students, we're just below. We meet it, but then when you take the early release hours away, we're under. So that's another discussion that Mark has had from central office with the high school about is there a way of looking at that differently so we can gain some hours back.
Other questions? Sure.
Mike, I'm looking at the materials that we have in the stipended positions, and I think you just mentioned those. For summer stipends, is that open to any teacher at the high school, or is that the MOU committee?
That's open to
And what is their goal by the end of the year? By the end of the summer?
Well,
what do you want as a product?
We talked about that at great length in my office this afternoon, from 1 till after 2 o'clock. We would like to, by the summer, have a framework of an advisor-advisee program that would be the collector of the data on the students. And then we need to kind of ferret out, so to speak, the opportunities that are out there, start looking at other opportunities. Mark and I need to work with EBC and other community groups that are out there to look at the viability. If we send 699 students out to do community service, are those hours available out there? And if they are, where are they? But also other opportunities for students through internships and other programs. We're bringing in a bank next year to provide our students with the opportunity to earn internship credit within the school. Those are programs that we need to build on. It can't be just one program. There's got to be others that we have to foster and develop.
So then, up to 4 stipends will continue during the school year. Are those the same people for continuity, or is that a new group, or?
That's to be determined. I'm meeting with my staff on this Wednesday morning to talk about the vision of where this is going to go, and I'm going to ask the people who would be willing to do this, and then sit with them and come up with a game plan. My game plan in talking to Mark and talking to the people around the table this morning, or this afternoon, was to create those parameters and then start building on that framework, really developing a whole program. I think one of the things we talked about back in February was coming forward with a plan that is all encompassing, so all the details are worked out. And that also means getting back to our students, but it also means reaching out to our parents so that we get a sense from the community what's important to them too. So. As we talked about today, Mark mentioned some kind of a looping program where we would develop some things and take it back out to people to respond to, and then come back to the table and say, okay, this met with good features, or this looks good, but this needs to be worked on. You can get good feedback from this particular part of the plan. But by the end, I would say by sometime February at the latest, we need to come forward with something and run it by the community. In the meantime, we need to work with our constituencies so that we keep them in the loops that are evolving.
So are you hoping to start offering things in the 2012, 2013?
Yes.
It will be beginning to be implemented, or?
Yes. We spoke today looking at possibly starting a pilot program. But those are still things that need to be ironed out and worked out. I mean, we talked about a number of different scenarios, and we felt it would be better for me to be general in my discussion with the staff bring that committee together and then really get specific as, okay, here's the timeline, here's the set of things we need to do, and then start working on that diligently over the summer. And then that has to continue, in my view, from September to January, February, when we have the whole package put together. And it's got to be well thought out, and it's got to be detailed, so everybody knows exactly what this entails. And it could be a pilot program. It could be part of it a pilot program, part of it an implementation for the entire school. Remember, I've had committees that, you know, have been sitting on a senior project and sitting on an advisor-advisee program, and I think if we take those ideas that those committees came up with and kind of tweak it to fit this MOU recommendations, I think we have a solid basis to start from. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're working with things that have already been developed, but now looking at it differently and implementing it in a different way.
And this is my last, I just want to say that when we met back in March and we talked about all these things, one of the things that we did talk about was taking the time to develop a program that we were going to be proud of. And I think this is a great first step. I'll be looking forward to hearing more about it as you move along in the process.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your support. And one of the things that we talked about today was to get a subcommittee of the school committee. Maybe it's the MOU group that met, just to be involved in conversations
Right.
early on rather than later on. And of course, the group was open to that. Very open. Not only that, there are other stakeholders that should be involved too.
That's where that, especially that's where that looping comes in, where you know, we report back and we gather more information, and we bring it to people to take a look at and give us feedback, so that we can then go to, you know, go to that next step.
Thank you.
Are there additional questions or comments, Mr. Coles?
So the advisor, advisee, and senior project, that's targeted for 2012?
It's possible.
Possible, okay.
I don't know if everything would be implemented in that year. I think we have to really take a hard, long look at that. You know, we talked early on of trying to implement this for next year, but, you know, we kind of pulled back.
Yeah.
Students have had to, and staff, and
A lot of
it's really
change.
student and staff, a lot of change,
Yeah.
schedule change.
Yeah.
Parts of it went well, parts of it did not. I'm not, you know, not going to sit up here and say everything was rosy. You know, so I think we have to be careful.
Sure.
I think we have to be measured and careful, and, you know, even though, you know, NEAS wants this done yesterday, I think we have to do what's in our best interest, and I think let the chips fall where they may when the visiting team comes in 13. But, you know, I think some of these things would definitely be doable by 12, 13, whether it's in a pilot program for parts of it or in a full implementation for other parts of it. I think one of the things we have to really get a handle on is exactly what are our students doing outside of the classroom, because I don't think we have all of that data. So that's something that we need to, as we're moving along, okay, what are our kids currently doing? And then, okay, what does that give us? How many kids? And now, how can we take it to school-wide? And what does that entail? The community's going to have to join hands with us here, because we'll be sending kids out to either do community service, internships, site-based learning projects. You know, I would think John would welcome 699 students, but you know that would be a challenge, and we want to spread kids out so that they have areas of focus that they would have an interest in, so that they could then build on that. And you know, the Maritime Museum would be another a place to start having those discussions, and there are other places in the community and businesses and you know, nonprofits that I think we can tap into.
Yeah, it's a lot of opportunities. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Just want to thank all the teachers in the high school and everyone on your team that's been working on this. I know this has been a lot of work, even just this, reducing the amount of that one block. I know that's a lot of work.
Thank you very much. I think the superintendent is asking us to make a motion and approve this.
Yes.
We have a motion.
And it's on the second page, those 3 bullets.
Motion as well. Do we have a motion approving the MOU for implementation?
I move that the school committee accept the MOU agreement as written.
With a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mike. We look forward to the ongoing conversation with us in the community about this. I think we have made our friends from Golden Wave about as long as they need to. So at this point, invite them up. Shake hands with us and go around the table.
Yeah. That theme music that you'd like us to play?
Yeah.
So, as the Gomi people are coming up and setting up, let me just thank the teachers who are going to be involved in this project, and John Terry and John Howard for leading the effort. And I want to say, I want to speak on behalf of Angela Bick for being involved with Gomi. Angela's the director of curriculum. So I'm thanking everybody for being up here, but certainly we have, these are your pathfinders. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we will be talking about phase 4, and phase 4 is going to happen, okay? And these are going to be your pathfinders, and especially Jay Leon being the first. Angela?
Yeah. Great. All right. No PowerPoint. Okay.
No
Why?
No, they're just going to talk. So I have the great pleasure of bringing the place-based education team to you tonight. They are going to review for you how the pilot went this year. As you know, they came to you 4 times throughout the year discussing the pilot, and they're going to give you a report out on how that went this year. But more exciting, we're going to talk about where it's going. So what the next phase is, and we're going to introduce some of the new teachers that are going to be a part of the next phase next year. So I'd like to start by introducing Dr. John Terry, who you've all met before. And as you know, Dr. Terry is the founder and director of GOMI. And he and Jay Leone, who was our pioneer this year in the pilot for place-based education at the high school, are going to start the discussion tonight. And then I'll introduce you to some of our teachers that are going to be participating next year. So, John and Jay, you want to kick it off?
Well, I'm really not going to say very much, because I think it really is good work for Jay. I thought I'd just sort of say some closing.
Okay.
But
Jay,
I
you
do
want to
thank
kick
you.
it off?
Those weren't closing.
No, those are my closing statements. Yes. So yeah, I'll be brief too. Really just wanted to kind of highlight that what the project was about and kind of lead into where we're going. Just as a refresher, we had AP Biology course this year. The 13 members of that class were part of the pilot program. I guess kind of the history that never got told until the kind of summary of the pilot came out here is that when we first started this program, we set out to kind of look at how this might look and kind of just envision it and how would this be implemented and what would it look like in a school and how would the place-based education approach of what GOMI is and what kids can get out of being in a place and learning, as part of their community and really having that just open up the curriculum that they would otherwise be getting from a book or from the whiteboard or from the PowerPoint presentations. And really, how do we do this and how does it, affect our kids in a positive way? So that was the goal. And I kind of said, this is great, I'm right on board. And so I jumped on and we sat down and it was John Halloran and myself and Graham Taylor at Parker River Refuge. And we started to talk about, what this might look like and so forth and so on. And we all kind of got to about the middle of the meeting and said, why are we just talking about this? Let's do it. And so we kind of said, you know, let's make it happen, and let's just see what happens. So that was kind of, you know, we really kind of just, you know, said, you know, if this is the approach of place-based education and experiential learning, and then let's participate. So we decided that's how we were going to tackle this. And so with that, the pilot program kind of became very, very endearingly known as the Shakedown Cruise, where basically what our goal was to find out, you know, as this project expands, what are some of the challenges that we face as teachers, as administrators, and the students, what are they going to face as far as what this looks like as it becomes part of a curriculum and embedded in their learning. And so we learned a lot, and I'm very glad we decided to tackle the pilot the way we did, instead of just kind of going at this pedagogical, theoretical level and outlining plans and all that kind of stuff. We would have lost, you know, we would have been a year behind, really, because we would have run into all of the problems that we faced, you know, with kids fighting, you know, weather and you know, being out for 2 or 3 hours in freezing cold rain and wind, and you know, being really uncomfortable, and then, you know, feeling kind of, you know, disheartened a little bit by that, and you know, various transportation issues, and really, you know, really highlighting the importance of communication between the students and the community liaison, and you know, what an important role that is going to play as we move forward. So the approach really, I think, was more beneficial than I think we even anticipated it would be, just because we learned, you know, through the experience what kinds of things that we had to deal with, and we did, you know, deal with a lot of them, you know, during the pilot, and at very minimum highlighted what things we're going to tackle this summer for those things that are still, you know, somewhat up in the air. But most of those things, if they weren't tackled during the year, at least have been outlined as far as how already, even before we go into the Summer Institute, what you know, what kinds of things will work as we move forward. So you know, I think, you know, as far as student projects that came out of the pilot, you know, it was kind of, you know, mixed message on, you know, on that kind of things, but that wasn't the intent, and that's, I think, you know, as far as our program went, you know, we accomplished, I think, at least as much, if not more, than we had hoped, with really getting a feel for what this was going to look like, and how it was going to work as it goes. So that's all I have to say.
So I will say words. And a couple at the end, but I'll keep it light and breezy. So one of the really big things we accomplished, the next 3 people down the road here, plus one who couldn't make it, was Brandon Sturmer, who's a social studies teacher from the high school. And one of the things we wanted to emphasize tonight really was a movement forward from all the hard work that Jay did. And Jay is very tenacious, patient, and he has a high level of capability of dealing with ambiguity.
Well, I still have a diplomatic way to say something. I'm not sure.
I say he's a good man. You got a good guy here. So, but through Jay's work, we were able to recruit 3 of the teachers from the Knox School. Jay's going to continue with us this summer, as is Brandon, and we're going to move from what Jay did to a very intensive week-long training session with the Gulf of Maine Institute this summer, and the folks down the line here are going to talk a little bit about what I think that might be fun to do.
Right. Well, let me introduce them to you so they can talk to you about that. The other thing I think is really exciting as we move into the next phase is we're looking at kind of a multidisciplinary approach to the 2 projects that are in line for next year, which you're going to hear more about. But at 7th grade, it involves many content areas and many teachers. We have 3 7th grade teachers here with us tonight that are going to talk a little bit about their project. But they've also been collaborating with everybody on the 7th grade teams and talking about how this project might be able to reach out to as many 7th grade students as possible. And then, as John had said, Brandon Sturma isn't with us tonight, but when Brandon came to us with his interest, the thing that excited him was that Jay had already started something. And he wanted to collaborate with Jay to expand it beyond science into history, particularly with an eye on civics and how all of this work that Jay's kids are doing, the impact that has on, from a civics perspective and what our civic responsibility is around that work. So for me, as director of curriculum, that's really exciting to see us making multidisciplinary connections as we move into just this next phase, which is more than I had even hoped for. So that's great. So no further ado, I'd like to introduce Sean Reynolds, seventh grade science teacher at the Knock Middle School, Jessica DeLacy, 7th grade science teacher at the Knock Middle School, and Sean Flaherty, 7th grade history teacher at the Knock Middle School. And they're going to talk to you a little bit about their project for next year.
Okay, I'll get started here and just sort of give you a brief overview of where the middle school initiative is at the moment. When we were asked to be teacher leaders for the Gulf Maine Institute at the middle school, we were told that we had the opportunity to start a pilot program with some of our students. And in the tradition of middle school, we discussed it with our teammates, and we all, from the get-go, said, it's all or it's none. So what we're doing next fall is going to impact 167th graders across the curriculum. And we're going to do that by basically developing this place-based education cross-curriculum unit that's going to take place for the most part during fair weather, September and October. Okay? At least that's when we're going to be actually outside for 4 to 6 weeks is what we're looking at, which is a chunk of time. And we're going to take advantage of our community and some of the people in our community, some naturalists and scientists and historians and people who are involved in preserving the history of dories in our community. And who knows where else this is going to take us, but these are some of our initial contacts we've made with the community. We already have dates lined up on the refuge with Lisa Hutchins. We're going to weave our work with Liz Duff, which has been going on now for 15 years. There's some long-term ecological research we do at the job that probably most of you know about, I hope. And that's also going to be part of this unit, but we're extending it. This is not going to be 3 or 4 field trips. This is going to be a new way to design and deliver our curriculum. And it's going to have immediate and appreciable impact on our curriculum next year. And that's why I'm excited about it. And that's why we're here. Because I like the opportunity for us to just get outdoors and get these kids involved in place-based education. Yeah. And so we're looking forward to July 2nd to 8th when we can actually sit down together. And our main objective there is going to be just to develop the curriculum. We really get a lot of the details down so that when we report to you next time, we have a much better idea of what this is going to look like and how the students are going to really, hopefully, from this, gain the appreciation of their natural environment, become stewards of that environment, appreciate the history of their town, and learn the curriculum here in Newburyport using our resources around here. And it's going to be, I think it's going to change our curriculum because it's going to really require them to come up with their own questions and their own investigations about their place around them. And if we can guide them in the right way, you know, by prompting them and guiding them and giving them opportunities, it's going to make sense quickly, and hopefully that'll encourage these kids to get involved in place-based education and some of the initiatives they've taken in middle school as they move up into high school.
So branching off that, I think we're just really excited to get our 7th graders outside, out of the building as much as possible. Just based on our few field trips throughout the year, I've seen how much that really impacts the kids, getting them outside, getting them into the community. Having gone to Gomi Institute 2 years ago, I've seen how Gomi has really changed the lives of so many kids, not in Newburyport, but all over. Thank you.
I just want to say, coming here tonight, I'm not watching one of my favorite TV shows, and that's this meeting.
Want an autograph, Sean?
I'll watch the reruns Saturday morning. You know, I've known about Gomi for a long time. I worked with John for many years, and I would always get excited when John would have the high school kids come back to talk to the middle school kids.
He's talking about John Howard.
Yes, sorry, yeah, John Halloran. And those kids that would always come back, I always remembered as, you know, special kids at the middle school. And so, year after year, I'd be listening about Gomi and thinking, gee, maybe I want to do it. You know, how do I do it? I'm a social studies teacher. And then when the place-based curriculum idea came together, I thought, well, maybe there's a way that I can involve history. And I've already had some outreach to the folks at the Maritime Museum, and I've had one preliminary meeting. There's a lot of interest and excitement from the people at the Maritime Museum, you know, wanting Newburyport kids to be involved with them more and more. So I'm excited. I'm sure I'll be doing some science. I'm loving some science, but I'm going to really enjoy also bringing some history in, because you know, I teach ancient history, and a lot of the civilizations that we talk about with the kids are civilizations that evolved along a river, and we have one right here in our backyard, and you know, that's something I really want to examine and hopefully get the kids involved in.
Well, why don't I just say a few comments, and then we can open it up for some questions. I'd have to start to just say, at a very personal level, how happy I am at this very moment, and how much work it's taken to get here is really hard to explain. But I'm delighted with the team that we've been able to put together. And I'm really so pleased that we've had the support of the school committee and the superintendent, which is critical. This wouldn't happen without it. I also want to say this is only the first step. And just a few words about why place-based education isn't a field trip. Because if we confuse terminology here, we're really going to forget what this is really truly all about. When we're talking about them going out and to the refuge and going to these other places, they're not going out on a look-see field trip. It's not as if they're going to the Museum of Science or the Museum of Fine Arts for a day away from school to learn about things. This isn't a picture show for them. This is where they're going to be intimately and deeply and physically and intellectually involved with something that's going on within their own community, from which they are going to be learning really very important skills, the kind of skills that you expressed in your mission statement, and the kind of skills we've talked about before around what the 21st century needs are. These are the skills where they're going to learn how to think, they're going to learn how to interact, they're going to learn how to connect, they're going to learn how to work as teams. And you guys should feel good about yourselves too, for encouraging us and letting us, and we're looking forward. We're going to come back in September after we've had our week-long training sessions, and we're going to report to you, and you're going to be delighted with what you hear. If you think what you heard tonight was good, what you're going to hear in September is going to be better. Did I leave anything out?
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the school committee? Stephanie?
Jay, I mean, you said something to me that just really strikes a chord, and I'm so glad that you guys took the ball and ran with it instead of just sitting down and waiting for it to be perfect on paper. I think you, like you said, you just would have lost so much time. And I'm thrilled to see you guys bring it to the middle school, because you will get so much immediate feedback about what's working and what's not from those kids. Do you know what I mean? It really brings an added element. No, but that's fantastic. You know, so I just, you know, I can't speak highly enough about GoMe, and completely support the project and projects, and really applaud you for taking this on. I know it's a lot of extra work, but it's exciting, and thank you for your time.
I have two questions, I guess. One is for Jay, because he's the one that's taken students through it. Can you tell us a little bit about reactions and comments from the students who participated this year? What was their feeling about this? Then I also have a question for John.
Sure. I think that the overall feedback was very positive. I mean, I think the experience and the ideas of what the kids took from it was extremely positive. And I think the groups who really ran with it really got a lot out of it. But there were, it was also, I got a lot of good feedback about what didn't work and what caused them problems. In particular, it was the seniors in an AP class who were the kids that are extremely involved. So we had a lot of conflicts with sports and other extracurricular activities and kind of things like that. So, so the response to them was positive in the experience, but also really informative about how those things are going to have to balance out and how we schedule that kind of thing. So, but I think a lot of the really good feedback, I think in the PowerPoint there were a few quotes from the students, that it was some of them really didn't know that the refuge was even there, or the kinds of things that were going on. I mean, and some of them it's like in their backyard. I mean, they walked outside and they're there, and they didn't realize that these people were fanning birds and keeping track of all this stuff and the impact of global warming on migratory patterns and so forth. And I mean, this is global things at the local level. I mean, it doesn't get any better. And I mean, that was the best feedback was weird. I mean, it was pretty widespread in different types. And most of the students in that, just that initial kind of exposure to what the projects were in the first couple of field experiences, that was the widespread. That was the feedback, was that they were really amazed at how much was going on that they didn't realize, both event-wise, but also the connection to curriculum and kind of current world events and how it was all there. So that was the best part about it, for sure.
So before I ask my question to John, I'm going to keep him on the edge of the seat for a little longer. Next year, as you take a look at what you're going to be doing, is it still going to be AP course, or are you going to be
for this year? Yeah, we're going to do one more year with that kind of crew, just because at this point I want to build on what I've done before I start looking at it. I think my goal would be to expand it out, or kind of pass the torch a little bit to some of the we have 2 semester-long environmental science courses as well as the AP environmental course. So most of the things that I'll be doing with the AP biology kids fits right away into that. So
you better move quickly. They're coming up from the middle school.
Yeah, that's the best part about it. Is that there'll already be that kind of kind of momentum anyway. So so we'll be that same group now, but I think that it's definitely something I'm going to encourage those folks to join us next year, so those can pass the torch.
So, John, my question to you is, I know GOMI is not a local organization. We don't live by what happens in Newburyport, but it's a whole series of community all the way from Gulf of Massachusetts all the way up Gulf of Maine, all around Brunswick, Nova Scotia, etc. Is this as you look at it, a pilot that you seek to replicate in other communities?
Yes. You want me to say more?
No, that's what I think that's important, because I think we talk about the fact that, we often talk about the fact, and I think in public conversation today, we talked about the fact, back in the days when Newburyport was on the leading edge of education. I think this is an example of how today we continue to be on the leading edge of education. And I want to thank John and Hal for taking an interest in Newburyport and working with us so that, at least in this particular aspect, we can continue to be leaders in education. Hopefully this is some areas that we expand to in the future.
Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to say I'm really excited because I'm hearing great words. I'm hearing teamwork. I'm hearing outside the classroom learning. I'm hearing taking risks. I'm hearing discovering. And I also want to thank, this program wouldn't work if it wasn't for you teachers that were willing to step forward and get excited as well. So I just wish you all the luck in the world, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you again. And congratulations, and this is great. Great.
Any other comments?
Can I just make one quick, because I don't want to be remiss if I didn't point out the two other people sitting in the back there who have been very, very important as part of the team working to get this done, and that would be Sherry Melto. Would you just stand up, please, Sherry? And the beloved John Halloran. Been a critical person getting this thing on the road from my perspective.
I just want to speak to 2 points. I'm not going to speak to challenges because you answered my questions about that. I loved your comment that this is not just a field trip, it's immersion into wherever you're at. I can just envision so many possibilities of that immersion. And I hope you're able to connect with the community members that you involve in this. Because I'm sure, you know, the guy down the boathouse has probably brought a lot of classes through before and done his tour, but maybe what you're going for is just to look for something a little bit different. Cross-curriculum stuff is amazing. History, civics, I can easily see math being pulled in, art, reading, all sorts of things. And I have to speak to the enthusiasm of everybody up here. I mean, I think that's what gets results, is enthusiasm and that's it.
And I think it's going to be the enthusiasm of the kids that you're going to see here next year. That's really going to.
Oh, it's contagious.
You want to get student buy-in to the curriculum. You get them outside. You get them involved in hands-on experience. And that's huge, especially at our level. I know that.
We did that. Any comments?
Yeah, I just want to essentially echo what everyone's been saying, and having grown up in Newburyport before you had all the video games and everything else, we used to spend our time running around the marsh, fishing, hitting worms, jigging for pollock, all kind of different things. And we do have a very rich resource to work with. And I think it's really important to teach the kids about it, because it's really easy for them to get consumed with other things. And these are things right at their fingertips. I think Mr. Leone mentioned that it doesn't get any better than having global factors or helping kids understand concepts like global warming and its impact right at your doorstep, or is the invasive nature of pepperweed. That bogs down where I used to always get minnows. I can't get to my minnow spot anymore because that pepperweed.
That'll be your project.
And I know you also study the mamachugs and all that other stuff. So there is just a wealth of things to learn, and I look forward to hearing about the exposure that you're going to be able to present to all the kids, and I think it'd be a great thing. And also the historical aspects of what the history of this area was in terms of intercoastal porting and privateers and all the different things that Newburyport was when we were a shipbuilding capital for clippers, which were the fastest ships ever built at that time. And there's just there's a lot of history to be brought forward, so I know that the history folks in the group will really enjoy delving into that. And I know the Customs House people are really excited about that closer relationship as well. So look forward to all that good engagement that's just around the corner.
I will just toss in my comments as well. I've been very excited about this project from the point at which I first heard about it. The fact that you've been relentless about reporting out to us throughout this pilot has really, I think, helped us a lot to understand it and help the community. I have to say that to see the teachers who have stepped up to the plate to do this, it says worlds to me about the kinds of projects we're going to see and the kind of work that we're going to see. And as a parent of a soon-to-be 7th grader, I'll tell you that, you know, that I like the subversive aspect of setting up expectations in my child that this is what education is going to be about. So they're going to have, he's going to have this experience in the next year, and he's going to expect that that's the way we're going to do business. And I think that really is going to move us along from good to great, great to greater. I'm very grateful, and I'm glad to see how jazzed you guys are about this, because it is really invigorating. So thank you very much for this work.
Just another word, and then I promise I will go away.
These are your closing comments?
These are my closing comments. It's up the door. But there's something I just wanted to add, that both Newbury's and I have been, they also have been an incredibly important part of this process as we've gone along. And Dr. Orlando down the end there. Relentless in reporting to the school committee, because as not to take away anything from what's been said about you guys, because I think you're great. This thing can't happen without your support. I mean, it's just practical, logical thinking. So we need to report back to you, and you need to ask us questions, and we need to tell you what it is we're doing. And if we can work that way as a team, so we're part of the team, we're part of the superintendent's team, I think that this fourth phase that we're talking about, and this whole idea of Newburyport being such a critical and important educational leader in place-based education, will really happen. But we need to work together, that's all. So that's my last words.
Those are your closing comments. Having heard them, I would just like to say thank you again. And look forward to the next report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. Well, this brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. I think by now most people know what to expect. Do we have any comments from anybody in the community? Monique?
He's still in earshot. Although Mr. Heller and John Heller is still in earshot, I asked him if I might include some of our prior conversations, because during public conversation I was considering sort of enveloping a couple of things that Mr. Cantor had mentioned here in terms of showcasing this. Because when GOMI had made their first presentation back on March 1st, I was reticent to make public comment because we sort of would have had to grind gears a bit, and I wanted to call this a historic moment. And you know, from the outside viewing, I've watched and observed all that many teachers have done, including Mr. Hellman, within the community. But this particular project and the way it's been assembled, and the fact that we're taking something that is nearly homegrown because it's adapted so closely by the teachers themselves is so exciting. And so working through John, I did confirm previously while he was out at sea on his ventures that a particular date to showcase this might be warranted. We were first thinking about it and discussing whether or not it would happen during the GOMI conference from July 2nd to July 8th. But we settled on an August 14th time frame. So I'd like to sort of re-engage you about a particular event. We've been given permission for use of Market Landing Park, which in electronic exchange with Dr. Kerbel, that was the first slide of the superintendent's entry plan back on December 6th of last year. And see if this isn't a way to showcase this amongst other things that are happening within the community, and the school committee, and the school committee becoming involved perhaps as a sort of retreat, just sort of as an orientation for this. So it's going to go ahead, probably most likely with the GOMI students, and that team usually does meet oftentimes on a Sunday, so it seemed to work out as a really good time for orientation. So I'd like to make overtures, to pursue that, and some things are pulling together. But this is so exciting, and I know that there's been discussion in the second presentation talked about engaging those institutions in the community, such as the Custom House Maritime Museum, but to reconstitute the community involved in this is so exciting. And I was being facetious, when I was about Newburyport once being on the vanguard of education, but they're so beyond the parents. People within the community are looking for that sense of pride again. And it does happen. There's many things that are happening under the radar, but just the concerted effort here. It's almost like, it was this second presentation, although it was much better done this evening rather than, the June 6th meeting. June 6th is when in Cape Sable, in Nova Scotia, that was when coming to the New World, and I think it was item 6 was justification for the Winthrop fleet to come to the New World, and it was education of students. This is a historic moment, and for Newburyport to be part of this pilot, not only that, developing it, is so exciting that it should be shared with the community and showcased. So if, I know that this is the last official meeting, but it's sort of like hope.
I doubt it.
Well, of the school year, I meant, and I know that you'll probably be meeting as well, so I'd like to sort of find a way of tapping into this and seeing that this happens, so to sort of regenerate the spirit. But this is, I agree with you, this is exciting.
Any additional public comment? Hearing none. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's evaluation, which I'm briefly introduce and then turn over to Nick DeCanna, who in the previous incarnation was chair of the policy committee, which usually undertook the managing the process of the superintendent's evaluation. In the past, we had a process that we thought seemed to work really, really well. We developed a matrix, a rubric by which we would evaluate the superintendent using a number of important ideas, entry plans, goals that had been set, the strategic plan, and then we would do it and then combine the evaluation and present the evaluation to the superintendent. In the last year, that process has been changed as a result of some new case law that's been established in other communities. So our process for doing this is going to be a little bit different than we have historically. So that having been said, I turn it over to Nick.
I think what I'm going to be a little bit of a stickler about today is the process to make sure that since this is the first time that we're going through these additional steps that we cover everything that we need to cover and explain a little bit as to why the process has changed. Basically, the process has changed so that members of the school committee can't amongst themselves define the evaluation of the superintendent outside of the transparency of public meeting. What you're going to be seeing today, or what we're going to be presenting today, is each individual is going to talk about how they would evaluate the superintendent as measured against a set of goals that were established for the superintendent at the beginning of the year. We will then take all of that information. It will be entered into the public record as required by law, and we will take all of that information and compile it into a single evaluation in the next week or so. But I do want to underline the fact that what we're going to be seeing from everybody today is individuals' work, basically the way that the process has worked up to this point is we established goals for the superintendent at the beginning of the year. 2 weeks ago, thereabouts, we asked the superintendent to take those goals and tell us how he had done against them. We have then distributed that to each member of the school committee so they can consider what the superintendent is saying, what they themselves know, and write an evaluation against those goals for the superintendent. These evaluations have a number grade that are attached to all of the specific goals that
we have in place here. We can grade, it's a 4-point scale. A 4 means the superintendent exceeds expectations. He's gone off the charts for us. A 3 means the superintendent is meeting the expectations. That's what probably most of this grading system is working correctly. Most of the superintendent's objectives should end up with a 3 score. A 2 means partially meets expectations. That could be because something got in the way, there was a change in direction, change in state law, whatever it might be. That would be an appropriate time for a 2. And then 1 is little or no progress toward meeting expectations. So in order to keep this portion of the discussion within the time allocation that we have for it, the process I'd like to follow is the following. Each school committee member will be asked to speak to their evaluation of the superintendent in the following way. Please explain any 4s at the high end, or any 1s or 2s if you have it below it. Unless you have something that you think is important for us to hear, there is no need to go into explaining a 3, which is he's met his expectations. So if you will focus on just explaining the 4s and or the 1s or 2s, and then based on that we should have a very good idea that the superintendent is basically doing his job. There's certain things he excels in and certain things he might need to work on. And that's what hopefully we will come out of this meeting with. Mark, does that sound reasonable to you?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. And then after you've gone through those, explaining your high and low scores, if you would also give us maybe a 1.5 minute statement of your overall evaluation of the superintendent and how he has affected the school district in this his first year. So, Steve, can we start at your end?
Sure.
We'll move around the table.
I'll try to stick to that format. I do have a couple of things I want to say about some of the 3 categories. I did score the superintendent with mostly 3s. 3s in section 1 for entry plan, 3s in section 2 for facilitating the school budget, 3 for section 3 for promoting a wide range of community partnerships. 3 for section 5. Oh, pardon me, no. 3 for section 6, a 4 for section 5, and a 2 for section 4. So I'll go to section 5 first, which is regarding proposing and implementing communication strategy for the school department. I see this as being a strong area for Dr. Kerbel. Other than not having some way to follow up and evaluate what's made available to the public to view and whether it helps the public's understanding of the schools, Dr. Kerbel is off to a great start in this area. I do believe it's very important for the public to know on a daily basis all the progress that happens in our school district. The local newspaper is not able to provide this. It then becomes an opportunity for district leadership to parade this out. It is prudent for Dr. Kerbel to seek feedback on the effectiveness of the strategy, as well as to survey stakeholders in the district for what information they're looking for and what is most helpful. So again, I gave Dr. Kerbel a 4 for that area. With respect to recruiting and retaining administrative staff, in fact, the school system, I did score a 2 in that area. I've always seen 5 keys as having a strong school district. Those are safe schools, highest student achievement, recruiting and retaining faculty, operationally efficient schools, and ensuring that more of each educational dollar makes it into the classroom. Today, looking forward, recruiting and retaining faculty is a vital process for our school district. Over the past few years, and most notably during the reorganization in 2007, we lost a lot of young teachers. Strategies regarding recruiting and retention, as well as mentoring, evaluation, and career tracks for internal candidates for administration must be considered and strengthened so that they will be effective for the future of our school district. Consequently, this becomes a vital link to strategic planning, and I do want to go back and touch on that briefly. Several strategies come to mind related to recruiting and retention and should be considered in view of the future of our school district. One is mentoring. Having a good balance of new and veteran teachers is essential. If not, you will not be able to attract and retain new teachers with the state-of-the-art knowledge to come to the school district and join veteran teachers in a shared and valuable mentoring process. The second is an internal track for administrative candidates. This school district has had a history of teachers growing into administrative roles. More needs to be done in this area to help interested teachers grow and develop so that they may take their historical knowledge of the district and the professional relationships that they have developed and advance the school district. And also establishing vital programs. Recognize those programs within the school district that are exceptional or vital and make sure they are properly resourced so they become vehicles to recruit and retain faculty. I think we heard about potentially one aspect of that tonight through the GOMI presentation. Dr. Kerbler has proposed a number of changes for the next school year. I do not have a full understanding of some of the linkages that are included in that new format or what may have led to them. Similarly, I have not heard about internal candidates for administrative positions, and I'm aware of the large number of faculty we have with lots of years of experience and of the many fewer young teachers that we have in the district who will eventually fill in these roles. But because the number are fewer, the district will need to recruit more faculty. I just see that as a really, really important area that needs attention. And just to touch on the strategic plan piece, I believe Dr. Kerbel did a great job with respect to the entry plan. He has mentioned that he's identified various entry plan recommendations to begin during this current school year and extend into next year. I just think it's really important to have some type of linkage between the concept he mentioned called theory of action for the entry plan and how to implement the recommendations. I also believe that strategic planning is something that needs to get reviewed every 6 months, and that the review needs to include as many of the parties that were involved in the strategic plan development as possible to ensure that each voice that contributed is heard, and that as many parties involved can articulate their ideas and formulations and how they came to those. I think it's really important. I know that Dr. Kerbel mentioned in his submittal to the committee that that the central office team is going to look over the strategic plan. I think it has to go beyond that. I think it has to go to as many parties, as many stakeholders as possible. But overall, I find, I believe Dr. Kerbel's off to a good start. I believe he's got a good feel for the community, the school district, and I look forward to his commitment next year to start the budget process sooner, and I think that's going to wind up being a better situation for everybody involved. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Yep.
Now you want me to go after that? I'm gonna start from the beginning because you said to explain your fours. I gave Dr. Kerbel a 4 on his entry plan. I found it very inclusive, and it was presented and executed throughout this year. It addressed all the subcategory topics fully, I thought. The entry plan was used well in utilizing the budget, addressing the strategic plan, and focusing on student achievement, which is one of our most important goals. I also, under that area, Dr. Kerbel talked about a color-coded entry plan recommendations, which I would like to see. I don't think we've been privy to that, color-coded. For the second goal, facilitate preparation of the budget, that was a 3, but I'd like to talk about it a little bit, if that's all right. As we've discussed, the budget process should start much earlier. I think we've all come to that conclusion on our own collectively, so that's not a surprise. I do believe that the budget process this year was much more transparent and inclusive, and I really appreciate that. Budget's constraints have, I think, limited progress in early intervention, foreign language, technology upgrades, and music. Despite this, forward progress was made in each area due to the superintendent's ability to think outside the box and pursue alternate venues. As to the discussion of priorities in the budget, I thought that was very clearly presented and updated accordingly. As part of this facilitation of the preparation of the budget, I would recommend reconvening the Finance Subcommittee to enhance communication in this area. Goal 3, promote a wide range of community partnerships. I scored Dr. Kerbel with a 4. I think he works diligently on developing these partnerships. I think he's open, honest, and makes himself readily available. He has become a familiar, positive face for our school district. He's always participating in events, meetings, and social events to enhance his communication with the community. He brought to us the philosophy of ad hoc committees and formed 4 separate working groups. That includes the school committee administrators and community members, and where appropriate, students. The result of this for all committees was very impressive. I hope we continue to use this approach in the future. As far as the EBC and the NEF under that same goal, it is important to acknowledge and foster these relationships. Community and business connections are critical to our success and need to be nurtured, and I think Dr. Kerbel has done that. We just had a Gulf of Maine Institute presentation. This is a wonderful opportunity for site-based learning. Dr. Kerbel has thoroughly endorsed going and concentrated on growing our involvement. The last statement under this goal, Dr. Kerbel said that he was working with the president of Northern Essex, and I'd just like to comment, bravo. I would like to hear more about this and encourage it wholeheartedly, and hope we are pursuing other opportunities to promote academic achievement and dual enrollment. Goal 4 was plan to recruit and retain administrative staff and faculty for the school system. I scored this also a 4. Dr. Kerbel has worked tirelessly in this area. The work is ongoing, and it's too early to determine the long-term results, but he has taken the appropriate steps to encourage administration and staff to be the best they can be. Administrative staff and faculty are most important in determining the success of any school system. It is very reassuring under the contract negotiations that we have a 3-year contract with our teachers. This will make the budget process somewhat easier, knowing the values in that contract as we move forward, so I appreciate that as well. As far as professional development under that same goal, under Dr. Kerbel's leadership, our initiatives for PD are well-defined and based on our strategic plan. We need to stay focused on these and structure time accordingly. It is this is a very important accomplishment. Dr. Kerbel noted the district-wide leadership team that he has put into effect. Our leaders should be nurtured. Mark's open door policy promotes decision-making and a feeling of being valued. One of Mark's stellar traits is that he works well with colleagues to promote student achievement. He encourages staff to stretch themselves and take on leadership roles. Goal number 5, propose and implement a communication strategy for the school district. I scored this a 3. I think we all know we need to do more work with this. I think we've made great progress toward this goal this year, but we can always use more communication with the public. I also believe that we should reconvene our subcommittee on communication. It is so important to maintain and increase our public face. Dr. Kerbel supported and encouraged a conversation with the public portion of our regular school committee meetings to hear the thoughts of the community. The in-the-loop strategy is an excellent one for keeping school committee up to date. Number 6, develop an effective relationship with the school committee. I ranked that a 4. The retreat set the tone for the year. Dr. Kerbel prepared the entire day. He facilitated each agenda item and led us to reach consensus on many issues. We established goals for our committee as well as our district. We've redesigned the structure to make more use of our time, which I think is a very important goal for us. Dr. Kerbel commented on the public forum we had. I really believe that more work needs to be done to increase attendance at these forums. And then the last thing, in a very short time, Mark has gained the respect needed to guide the school committee. He is an effective superintendent whose assets include communication skills, is knowledgeable, a leader, a colleague, trustworthy and honest. He's a wonderful addition to the Newburyport schools.
Nick, I would actually like to cast, because my perspective in working with Mark is a little bit different than everybody else's, having worked with him differently as the vice chair, and it seems to me that it would be really useful for those folks of a piece to go through theirs before I go through mine.
Okay. Next person in line is actually the mayor. And,
she didn't do her homework.
No, she did.
She did.
Yes, she did. The mayor asked me to basically she sent a letter with her evaluation, which I have in a sealed envelope so that people know that we have not, her evaluation has not influenced anybody else's yet. But I will open it right now as I read her letter. She says, "Dear Dr. Kerbel, school committee members and community members, please accept my sincerest apologies for my absence this evening. Many weeks ago, I was asked to testify tonight at the legislative hearing on congressional redistricting. I thank you for the opportunity to present my thoughts on the assessment of Dr. Mark Kerbel following the completion of his first year as a superintendent of the Newburyport School District. Our school district has been impacted by a revolving door of superintendents over the past decade. The change in leadership coupled with devastating cuts in school funding results in a loss of teachers, programs, and has created unprecedented challenges for our schools. Despite these difficulties, last July, Dr. Kerbel joined our school district. In this short time frame, he has completed a comprehensive entry plan that clearly identifies strengths, assets, challenges, and recommendations that have a profound impact across the entire school district. From day one, Dr. Kerbel emerged as a leader with deep compassion for education and teaching, who understands the day-to-day opportunities and the challenges of managing a district. Dr. Kerbel is an excellent communicator and demonstrates this through accessibility to school committee members, teachers, parents, students, and the community members. I also greatly appreciated the communication strategies he employed to keep the school committee in the loop, as well as the school and the local community. He knows how to listen and bring people together to work on common issues, as is evidenced by the creation of ad hoc groups, kindergarten, foreign language, technology, and music. Dr. Kerbel is a good fit to our school district. He is energetic, creative, thoughtful, and an excellent ambassador to the community on the needs of the schools. He has been present this year at numerous school and community events and eagerly reaches out to new groups who share his vision for our schools. Finally, I believe that Dr. Kerbel has earned the respect of the school administration and faculty, as noted by the successful contract negotiations, support for schedule changes at the high school, the development of a solid accreditation prep group, and work on new initiatives such as project-based learning. He appears very interested in new approaches to solving long-standing issues, for example, school funding, curriculum alignment, and CRAS proficiency. In closing, I am pleased to serve with Dr. Kerbel as a partner on the school committee, and I look forward to our continued work together to advance the needs of our schools. Sincerely, Donna D. Holliday, Mayor. And her evaluation, I will glance through it quickly here. Entry plan, she gave a 4-2. Dr. Kerbel initiated his entry plan, developing strong guiding principles, values, and goals that effectively directed the plan. Policy and governance accurately identified the strengths and assets of the school committee and has supported our collective efforts to improve focus and impact of our work. He has developed strong working relationships with the central office staff. Completed assessment of leadership needs of principals and prioritized areas for professional development. Efforts are underway to improve teacher evaluations. Extensive assessment of academics completed and district needs well delineated. The mayor has put a couple of twos here, Dr. Kerbel, but they are not part of the original goals, but rather, I think, she is seeking more information as I glance at her comments on some of the additional accomplishments that you listed. So they are not some that apply to the actual goals that you're being evaluated against. She also gave you a 4 in the area of promoting a wide range of community partnerships. Again, she mentions in the loop, the ad hoc groups, and the partnerships that you've established with the EBC and NEF, where she says this is an area of strength. Dr. Kerbel is everywhere. He attends numerous school, business, community, and other functions and events as the CEO of the schools. Strong advocate for his vision for the schools. She also gave you a 4 in your success in negotiating with the Newburyport Teachers Association. This was also an area of strength with a 3-year contract developed for the first time in several years. Demonstrates good communication and negotiation skills. A 4 also in proposing and implementing communication strategy. Communication skills and strategy to relate information across the district and with the community members is a real strength of Dr. Kerbel. The develop an effective team leadership with a school committee in the various subsets of this particular aspect. I think basically comes out of 3, but I think there's some comments that are worth noting here as I read through this. Basically, she is in agreement with the work that you've done in developing the relationship with the school committee, that it's meeting the requirements. She does feel that finance subcommittee needs a new format and should be integrated with a citywide initiative on finance. So that's some work to be done. And then she also commends you for building strong relationships with school committee members and communicating effectively with us. This she considers to be one of your greatest strengths. So that is a report from the mayor. Stephanie.
Okay. I'm going to stick to what Nick asked me to do, but I'm going to mention my 3.5s. Okay. Under the category of entry plan, while it was absolutely expected for you to deliver the report that you did, what I mentioned here was this was an honest report about what is working and what is not working in our district. Duly noted is the fact that this is not all that Dr. Kerbel was working on at that time. His day-to-day responsibilities, meetings, contract negotiations, etc., were taking place during a very busy time of the year, and he provided the district with an extremely useful report. His presentation was very well received, and the report was well received as well. I've marked 4s on the additions where you've got color-coded and theory of action, but you really want to see them. This, overall, under facilitating preparation of the budget, it averages out at a 3, but I did give you a higher ranking under the work of, under the subcategory of it should focus on student achievement, and the strategic plan is the framework for discussion. My comment in this area is as follows. The work that Dr. Kerbel did with the administration was stellar. He really challenged his staff to think about the budget and ask them tough questions. The insight gained from this year's experience will add value as he enters his 2nd year and will most certainly help to shape discussions much earlier for next year's budget. The reality of the budget, along with the reductions and the disappointment by staff and community, was professionally handled by the superintendent. He always kept student achievement as the #1 goal. Under promoting a wide range of community partnerships, I gave Dr. Kerbel a 4 under the area of widespread community participation in ad hoc committees. The ad hoc committees were a fantastic idea that engaged many members of the community, including parents, students, and even residents without children in the schools. The public forums that generated as a result of these were also of great value to the district. Dr. Kerbel's leadership skills have helped make these ad hoc groups successful. I gave you a bunch of 3.5s in the area of all the meetings that you attend, and a 4 under the meeting with President Enrollment in Essex, because I think that that's going above and beyond the call of duty, and would love to see the work going on there. Under planning to recruit and retain administrative staff and faculty, I ranked a 4 under successfully negotiating a contract with the NTA. Helping to negotiate a 3-year contract was a great accomplishment. Mark brought a wealth of experience to our team and established an excellent rapport with the NTA. This will allow the budget process to begin much earlier in fall of 2011, which is directly tied to another important goal of the superintendent's, which is to start the budget process early. Also under that subcategory for goal number 4, where you created the district-wide leadership team, I gave you a 3.5 in that your leadership is helping to inspire new teachers and staff members to step up. While change may be difficult at first, your positive approach provided and is providing the kind of atmosphere that fosters growth. This is a very valuable asset that you bring to our district. Under communication strategy for the school department, I put a 2.5 under this. Dr. Kerbel started the year off very strong by establishing the superintendent's page, Facebook, and the Superintendent Unplugged series. He also did a great job of getting out in the community and meeting one-on-one with people. The school committee needs to provide support for communications in general. Most districts have someone that does PR and marketing full-time. While it is unreasonable for us to staff a position like that right now, we need to work with the superintendent to come up with a manageable plan that delivers quality content and messaging about our schools to the entire community. On a personal note, I feel badly ranking that as a 2.5, but that's what came up. Under developing an effective team relationship with the school committee, I gave you a 4 under redesigning the committee structure to make time use effective. I mirror your comments that you wrote in here and wrote, we need to find a healthy balance between what was implemented after the retreat versus the old subcommittees. And I think you feel the same way. And in closing, I think you've had a wonderful year. It's been a very, very busy year. And I think the areas you shine in are in team building, and your leadership has helped guide the ship. It's great to have someone at the helm. And I think that you are providing us with an atmosphere of growth, and it's a pleasure to work with you.
Okay, as you can imagine, mine's brief. But to the point, If I gave a 3, it meant, as far as I could tell, the expectation was met. So, the entry plan. The entry plan made perfect sense to me, so it got a 3. Additional accomplishments against this goal. The color-coded system is a great idea. I'd like to see it. That was a 4. That would help someone like me, be able to understand exactly how things are going. And I think the community as well. The other goals were 3s because they're sort of in process. Preparation of the budget. I did give a 4 to the budget conversations with the public. I thought the public hearings were very informative and realistic. You didn't pull any punches. It was clear that it was a difficult process. As Stephanie said, you did a great job as captain of that ship. I'm sure it was a trying time to keep people calm, but I think you were successful at that, and it showed. In the budget process, the contract negotiations in the future, because of a 3-year contract being out of the budget process, not interfering with the budget process, should be helpful. Let's see. next year, you plan to start the budget process early. I believe that's a great idea. In the goal number 3, to promote a wide range of community partnerships, I give you all 4s here. You have become the face of the schools in Newburyport. I think people feel very accessible to you. I think you have reached out to the community through the EBC and the NEF and the Chamber of Commerce and all the other places that you've managed to show up. The ad hoc committees, I think those are probably one of a great achievement under your belt, because people show up and they experience an atmosphere that welcomes their comments. I just find that crucial. The ad hoc committees, we don't have a lot of people showing up here on a Monday night, but we do have people showing up to the ad hoc committees meetings, and I just think that's a wonderful thing. The in the loop emails, I've told you before, I love them. I have to set aside, if I'm at work and I happen to click on it and see it, I go, well, stop, not because I need to sit down and really look at it. I enjoy it. It really is, like, I wish I was that organized. That's amazing. It's good stuff. And community involvement, the bank branch and the high school. You know, when I first heard it, I don't know, call me crazy, but I was uncomfortable with it at first. Everybody else was excited about it, but then you sold the idea. Of course, the rest of the community also sold the idea to me too. I'm a quick learner, but originally it didn't make sense to me. You did a great job of bringing them in, giving us a great presentation that made me realize the true value in financial literacy in the schools, as well as community partnership with the business in the community. So there's all 4s there. GOMI, your support of GOMI, your recognition of it and its value to the district, and your support of it, you know, as well as a lot of other people, but you are the superintendent, and I do look forward to that being a great addition to our district's values and place-based education. Again, going back to contract negotiations, I was very impressed with contract negotiations this year. Even though I wasn't on the committee, I was aware of what was going on. And what's the term you used? Non-adversarial, it was
Collaborative.
Interest-based. Yeah, that was a real impressive negotiation process, and to get a 3-year contract is wonderful. It just helps so many other aspects of what we do as a committee down the road, especially in the budgets, and especially with the teachers and them recognizing the value to the district. Ongoing professional development, 3. The district-wide leadership team, I got pretty excited about that, and gave you a 4 on that one. And I think the evidence, there is evidence of the fact that you're bringing out the strength in the people and allowing changes to take place. And I find it very interesting and encouraging. Communications, I give you 4 there because I see that you're always looking for a new way to connect. I love seeing your face pop up on Facebook and what you have to say. And I always click on that little like button because it's good stuff. You know, it's the way to do it. You know, that and a lot of other things. I would like to, you get to keep that going, obviously. I think you're not the type of guy to sit back and pat yourself on the back about Facebook. So I'm sure you're looking at other ways that you can stay connected with the community. As we, I have to agree with Stephanie, I believe we as a committee need to continue to work on that as well. Developing an effective team relationship with the school committee. I have to say that the retreat last year was, I give you a 4 for you know, building for the school committee retreat and that goal. That was quite an experience for me. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about our goals as a committee, how we work together, what we want to accomplish, where I fit in the committee, and how welcoming you were and interested you were in everyone's, when everyone had to say. And you forced us to work too. You really made us work. I made a note here on redesign committee structures, take time, use and effective. Reconvene subcommittees on communication and finance. At another time, possibly, we can discuss if there are any others you want to do this to, and maybe speak, maybe sometime you can speak to why these 2 committees. But I think I know where you're going with that, and I tend to agree with you for that one. Hold a follow-up session. Oh, we held a follow-up session. This could be things. Okay, additional comment. The last one, I think the committee, the mayor, the community, find you very accessible. You're not hiding, you're out there. Everybody sees you. Again, I think you've become the face of the Newburyport schools. And I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you very much.
Okay, and, keeping with Bruce's request to go last, I will go next and then let Bruce wrap it up. I think Dr. Kerbel's performance against the goals has been very, very solid. His score, in my evaluation, is a consistent 3. However, there are certain things that I think he particularly excelled in one area in which I would particularly like him to work on improving. So I did call those out as I go through. So the first 4 that I have that I'd like to call out was I really appreciated the way Dr. Kerbel took leadership and with his staff started our budget conversations out with the value-added budget. Not with how much money we have, but what makes sense for student achievement. And so for that part of the budget facilitation, the preparation, I called that out with a 4. In the areas of promoting the wide range of community partnerships, I think he deserves 4s for outreaching to a wide group of the community through the ad hoc process. We really reached out through these ad hoc committees to a wide spectrum of populations. And it wasn't important just because we reached out to this wider portion of the Newburyport community, but also because we gained such a wealth of experience and wisdom from those people who did participate. And I really believe, as it's been said before, the ad hoc approach is a hallmark of what Dr. Kerbel has done for us. I've also had the privilege of working very closely with Dr. Kerbel on the NEF/EBC front. And I don't know that the school committee understands prior to working with Dr. Kerbel, the EDC, as they decided to join with the NEF, also decided to reinvent themselves in terms of what we should be doing in order to support our schools. Dr. Kerbel seized that opportunity to take leadership in developing about a 20-year-old relationship, to make it new and to make it truly responsive to the needs of our schools. And so for that, I also give him a report. And my thanks. It's been mentioned several times, thank you for the 3-year contract. I mentioned it again. And thank you to the committee and to Deidre for making that happen. That was deserving of the 4 in my point of view. And also thank you for, through the process of the retreat, making us rethink how we did business as a school committee. I think it was high time to consider that. I think we learned a lot. We've taken some new approaches, realized that we need to recover some of our old approaches. But that whole process, I think, is the leadership that you have shown there, and the ability to turn that into professional development for us as educators, I think has also been very important. I want to close with the one item that I scored a 2 on. And this puzzled me when I came up with this score, and it may puzzle you as well. Because this is a 2 in an area in which I recognize you have done an incredible amount of work, an incredible amount of new things that you brought to the table, and that's communications. The activity that you have had in the area in terms of the cable program, Facebook, your ubiquitousness in the community and talking, I think has been wonderful. And yet, this is the area in which I scored you 2. And the reason for that is I believe a lot of this activity can benefit from more focus, more clarity. I think you have fabulous ideas that get lost at times by anecdotes and by your personal style, which is wonderful, and we need to build upon that. Your style of communicating with people, you do a great job, particularly in small groups and in one-to-one. You're a fabulous listener, questioner. When it gets to larger groups, that's where I begin to see Mark Kerbel tends to wander, and you come across and say, okay, what was he talking about in this presentation? What was he trying to get across? And that is what I'd like to see us capture. And I think it really comes down to working, and perhaps the communications committee is the way to do it, or maybe not on a full-time basis, but finding some more professional help at the district level in communications to establish a strong and valid communication strategy. As the face of our district, you need to be very clear about whom you're communicating to, when, how, why. What is the key message that you're getting across to them? And I think you've had many messages, and perhaps and you've had many media through which you've communicated, and perhaps that combination has resulted in what I perceive as I think it can benefit from additional focus. In closing, I would like to say that from a personal point of view, I find the superintendent to be a fabulous facilitator for our district, a fabulous leader for our district. And one of the things that I see that he's done with the school committee, I also see him doing now, or also see right from the start, with his staff and with his teachers. And I think that is that he encourages us as individuals to follow our passions. And as he's allowing his staff, his teachers to do the same thing, our students are benefiting. as he's working with us as a school committee, encouraging us and working with us to follow those passions, has made this group a whole lot more fun to be a part of. And I want to thank you for that, Mark. It's a real pleasure working with you. Bruce.
Thank you. Nick, like you, I found that in those areas in which I worked closely with Dr. Curbo, I saw some different things. I saw some deeper things. I had a better understanding of what was going on with him. The problem that I had, and it's a wonderful problem to have, is that I've worked with Mark closely in a number of areas. So my evaluation reflects that, and some things I think that I haven't heard other people comment on that are things that I've noticed in working closely with Mark. And just stylistically, I should say that in those sections of additional accomplishments against this goal, I almost always commented, but I didn't almost always put a score there. So there are, where I put a score, it was significant.
I think for the clarity of everybody involved, those additional accomplishments really are to help us form the overall evaluation. They are not included as part of any averaging to come up with any kind of overall score for the superintendent. So that's fine.
On the entry plan, I gave the superintendent a 4. For reasons that are somewhat different. I thought the report identified stakeholders. In fact, the report identified a broad range of stakeholders in a thoughtful, intentional, and comprehensive fashion. It also, I thought, reflected really terrific insight into the community of Newburyport and cast a very wide net in bringing people to the table. And it did exceed my expectations. And under additional accomplishments, the theory of action entry plan, I wrote that Mark has presented the school committee with a thoughtful, thorough plan. It's been accompanied by clear and insightful assessment of the lay of the land for both the schools and the community. The additional clear, intentional, and strategic approach to the implementation work to be done provides a terrific metric for accountability and measuring progress, and that exceeded my expectations. Under facilitate the preparation of the budget, I gave Superintendent 4. I believe that there was significant improvement in the flow of the budget process from the perspective of information flow and community engagement. I believe that this was largely through the efforts of the superintendent. The process was significantly more transparent than I had experienced in most of the years that I've been here, and I thought that was certainly worth noting. And felt very strongly about that. In the bullet of it should focus on student achievement in the strategic plan, I put a 4 there. I wrote the budget presented was coherent and reflected strong input from the school committee in terms of emphasis. The superintendent was able to present a budget that reflected the vision of the school committee and the staff of the schools, introducing it as a benchmark for the community. In support of that initial budget, which you pointed out, Nick, the superintendent suggested a very thoughtful and intentional range of investments that reflected the focus on student achievement adopted by the school committee at our retreat. Of equal importance was the effort by the superintendent to canvass staff for their ideas. It significantly improved the dialogue about the budget this year. I was deeply impressed and grateful, very, very grateful for his advocacy for the arts during the budget process as well. And I thought that was certainly worth noting. In terms of the broad discussion of the budget priorities, I wrote, again, there's another 4 there, the budget included a set of reductions. The superintendent and his staff identified reductions that reflected some changes in our long-term thinking about how we're serving SPED needs in school, for example. As well, the redirection of resources to promote earlier interventions at the elementary schools was thoughtful and part of a longer-term vision. And even at this point, I had to say that exceeded my expectations dramatically, so I was very grateful for that. And like everybody else, the introduction of ad hoc groups was tremendously valuable to the budget process this year. To promote a wide range of community partnerships is a 4. The superintendent has made himself a presence in the community, leading businesses, organizations, and parents. He's a strong communicator in person. I also noted based on my conversations and my observations, when it came to participating in EBC and NEF meetings and the partnerships, I gave Mark before. I said the superintendent has been a strong advocate for schools in the EBC and NEF meetings and has been willing to promote projects with them that he feels bring added value to the system, some of which weren't on the radar screen of those groups. And I think that speaks to not only a clear vision, but you know, a willingness to advocate, to fight for things that he really thinks are important. And that was a quality that I wanted to note and exceeded expectations. And under GOMI, I also put a 4, and my perspective was, I wrote from my perspective. I had the unique experience of sitting in on the superintendent's first orientation to GOMI. And I was sitting right next to him. He immediately understood the implications of this. He was taking notes like crazy, and I could, you know, just looking over his shoulder, he clicked. You could hear the wheels turning. And it wasn't just, and he saw it not just for science, and I think he was instrumental in conceptualizing how the program might phase in. So that was really something that I feel very privileged to have seen and wanted to bring out. In terms of recruiting and retaining administrative staff and faculty, I have a 4, and my comments were this was begun and ongoing. He's begun discussions with the high school about a new structure that will strengthen the approach to 21st century skills in schools. Plans to move our administrators to a level of salaries that are reasonable and competitive while still sensitive to the community's perceptions of administrative compensation are thoughtful and coherent. He's had to manage the loss of administrators and the recruiting of several high-level administrators while at the same time being an optimistic and steady presence in the schools, and that to me is exceptional. Successfully negotiated the contract, there was a 4 there. After 3 consecutive one-year contracts that required nearly year-round conversations and negotiations, the superintendent was able to complete with the school committee a multi-year deal in less than a month and a half of negotiations. And I think that speaks volumes about trust and confidence in the superintendent by the staff and the school committee. It was exceptional. Additional accomplishments against this goal, where Dr. Kerbel talked about the leadership team. I wrote Dr. Kerbel's initiatives around engaging the staff in the process of generating ideas, and his openness to empowering staff have already begun to reshape the culture in the schools. The number of thoughtful, even courageous responses he received to his request for any staff feedback around potential budget cuts this year was surprising. I think in the long run, it will help the superintendent in creating a strong, empowered culture where staff are able to bring their ideas to the table. The recent changes in administrative staff at the high school reflect a growing understanding that we're trying to move the system from good to great. And rather than see that as a crisis, Dr. Kerbel has instead approached these shifts as the opportunity that they are. With the communication strategy, again, Dr. Kerbel's very, very strong area. He's been ceaseless in providing information and promoting transparency. He's also been creative and consistent in seeking new and enhanced ways to communicate with the community, ranging from his use of local access cable to social media. He's created a clear expectation that he's open to dialogue on many levels. Parents, even students, finding his door open and finding the superintendent a focused and attentive listener. He's open to new ideas around communication and committed to dialogue, not monologue, to an exchange of ideas and not simply a delivery of concepts. He's been active in promoting the achievements of the schools and always seems to have a story about something that is working for students. This has been an area, I think, of considerable strength. I think that the redesign of the committee structure, I rated very highly on that, and I wrote Dr. Kerbel's proposed a format for school committee meetings that was clear, focused, and effective. The shift to ad hocs was important, as was the realization that we need to restore two-standing committees, finance and communications. It was a powerful demonstration of Dr. Kerbel's willingness to learn and his ability to adapt. And in terms of the relationship with the school committee, I wrote that Dr. Kerbel's effectively reached out to each member of the school committee and established excellent working relationships. His inclination to keep school committee members informed about what he's doing and about potential issues before or as they emerge has enhanced these working relationships. They're built on transparency and respect. The superintendent is to be commended for his transparency and clarity. And, you know, I would just add pretty much to what everybody has said, that it has been a privilege to work closely with you, to see you and the system growing and actualizing. And I am deeply grateful for the energy and ridiculous optimism that you bring to everything. It's inconceivable to me that somebody can be as optimistic as you are, and I find that really a privilege to be working closely with. So,
so in terms of the next steps, we should all turn in hard copies of this report to Mrs. Kennedy so that she can include them as part of our minutes. We will be consolidating the information. I would like every school committee member to please send me electronically, if you will, a copy of your evaluation so I can compile them. I will keep in a single document your own individual evaluation, and then I will have a compiled version as well. So your comments and your specific things that you want Dr. Purple to see, of course, will be included in that. And so that will hopefully be done in the next week for Dr. Purple and the school committee to take a look at.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much for organizing this and for taking on the responsibilities. So we're all acquitted here. And I would tell Mrs. Kennedy that I'm having problems printing out this document. So
Yes, unfortunately, I
it will
don't.
be a late ad, as they say.
I don't have email anymore, so I do need a hard copy.
Well, you'll get a hard copy from me, so Nick and I can figure out how to print it out. So Nick will get an electronic copy of it tonight. He can work on trying to print that. Yeah, we can cover you guys. Thank you. The balance of the items on the agenda, which I think we'll move through as quickly as we possibly can. We actually did skip the MSBA update, so Deirdre, if you, I assume it's going to be Deirdre, superintendent's report, assistant superintendent's report, public comment, and then we're going to executive session. And warrants and minutes.
Warrants and minutes.
Can you, yeah, we should have allowed you to. Gee, sure. Sure, feel free, just jump right in there. All right, guys.
Oh, thanks. I wanted to say, while Judy and Lynn are still listening.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That was an awful lot, Judy, even for me. I just want to thank the school committee for taking the time and the tremendous amount of time and effort to fairly evaluate, especially in public. I wanted to say for any teacher who is listening, you can never complain about your evaluation again. I'm the only guy in Newburyport that gets his evaluation public on TV. So to all my friends who are listening, God bless you for the last hour. Thank you. I take your suggestions to heart. You know, when we talk about greatness begets greatness, going from good to greater, great to greater. You know, it's a standard I set for myself. And of course, I think we all want to be loved and feel that we're super, and everybody wants, you know, everybody will love all fours. I'm no exception. I want to do very, very well. But I am realistic. I am idealistic, more than realistic, which is what I like about myself the most. I really like being idealistic. And I've been called naive. I kind of like that too. Being naive is, I think, an endearing quality. That, but being my age, being naive, I think is something that I always will treasure. It goes along with being idealistic. So I will do, what I'll do is I will look at your evaluations. I will make kinds of adjustments so that I could take this district to another level. And that's, I really appreciate time and effort. And just want to thank, allow me a minute just to thank Kathy Manning. Kathy, Kathy's just a super administrative assistant, and so I want to thank her because she's a very, when we talk about a team, the person who cares about the team wants me to do well because they care about the district, and she puts herself last. So I want to thank the central office staff, principals, administrators, and the teachers. I think everybody has been terrific. Though I don't think people really roll their eyes when you talk about going from good to greater, great to greater. I think they take it seriously because I certainly do. And that when I talk about leadership and some of our leaders who decided just to concentrate on what they do, and I take that as a good thing. They're allowed to pass the baton to someone else that wants to step up, and yet they know enough to support the person who's going to step up. That makes us a great team. So I appreciate those that were in a leadership role and are moving on. Communication, the community and the parents have been terrific. I appreciate all their well wishes this year and their support. And when I say support, it doesn't mean all the people that agree with me. There are a lot of people that don't agree with me. Okay, and so I appreciate they have an honest dialogue with me. And so that's what I mean. I appreciate the contact, and especially the folks in the NEF and EBC. I work with them and what they're trying to do for the district. Christine McGrath, my mentor, and she might have finally gone home, but she's been to more meetings, and she's been a terrific mentor.
I saw your grade, by the way.
So I want to thank Christine McGrath. Of course, the Daily News have written so many positive articles, and that sets the tone as well, because the community doesn't want to deal with negativeness and negativity. There's hoping to be able to write about that. The WNDP has me on the radio station, and Wynn is terrific in terms of asking unbelievable questions I give him. And so I enjoy my time. I'm getting a little better on it, on radio, I think. It's been PortMedia the same. I think I mentioned, I want to thank Dominique, Dr. O, Zeb, Warren, especially Dr. O, for pushing the envelope appropriately, offering encouragement appropriately, and caring about the district with the kind of passion that I think that we all bring and demonstrate differently. I want to thank the school committee for a great year. And thanks to Deidre, Karen, and Angela. Thank you.
An update on MSBA. As you know, this Thursday evening at 7 o'clock at City Hall, we will be presenting to the Budget and Finance Subcommittee of the City Council and the Committee of the Whole. Again, that's Thursday evening at City Hall. Not sure if it's going to be in City Council chambers, quite frankly, and or upstairs. I'll be speaking with the mayor in that regard, and I can send you an email as to when it will be. It's my understanding from the mayor that the Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole are looking to have the presentation that was done at the public hearing on the 6th presented to the City Council members as well. Also, we have received enrollment letters for both projects from MSBA. Again, this really drives your project. Both parties must agree on design enrollment and these enrollment numbers. The enrollment certification must be signed, and during feasibility, all conversations around building projects and potential building projects are based on what you agree upon is your design enrollment. For the Knox/Moen, the design enrollment is, sorry, I just had it, $330 for grades 4 through 5, and grades 6 through 8, $515. Those-
5:15?
5:15. So that total is approximately 8:45. That preliminarily looks good to me, but I'm still doing some analysis. In regards to Bresnahan, they have given us 2 design enrollments for feasibility conversations.
Sorry.
All the faith in the
Do I have to gavel here?
Got one?
In grades 1 through 3, a study enrollment of 475. In grades kindergarten through 3, hold on, 625. They do not include preschool in design enrollment projections. Let me read just this one paragraph here. The MSBA understands the district is seeking a design enrollment to accommodate approximately 480 students in grades 1 through 3 for the proposed project, exclusive of a grade configuration change at the facility and a design enrollment of approximately 720 students if the facility is reconfigured as a pre-kindergarten through grade 3 facility. So we've got the design enrollment numbers for 1 through 3 and pre-K through 3. I do think they're a little short in the pre-K through 3 number. That number is 625. I'd like to see it around 640, 645. So if you do not agree with how they determine these enrollment projections and design enrollment numbers, you have 10 days to call up and do a conference call as to why you don't agree with those numbers. The enrollment projections as a whole in Newburyport are declining. They are based on population estimates for Newburyport using the Massachusetts Institute for Social and Economic Research. That agency indicates that there is going to be a near-term decline in female population cohorts between the ages of 25 and 44. So there is specificity in which they are determining these numbers. But your pre-K and kindergarten number is always a volatile number. So I want to work with MSBA regarding those numbers. So I've said to the superintendent not to sign these certifications so that I can have further conversations with them. And those are the next steps regarding the design enrollment numbers and certifications.
You said the number 720. What was that for?
Pre-kindergarten through grade 3.
The pre-K and the numbers.
They don't count
The
pre-K.
pre-K
numbers.
is part of this number.
That number, the 625.
Correct.
So that
Correct.
assumes 95 for pre-K, then
Approximately.
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 Okay.
If we could move to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'll be quick. The new Mullen School principal is Lorene Marks, and Lorene is signed her contract today. So I'm very pleased with that. I had a press release, and Lorene will do a great job. We're very fortunate to have Lorene join us. She's working on a new changeover. She starts July 1st. She may do a couple of days before then to work with Laurie Gallivan. And we also, today, to take Christina Palmer's place at the high school. I shook hands today with Deidre, and I met him, and Karen Brown, with Michael Testa. Michael is the assistant principal of the high school in Maynard, and Michael lives in Amesbury. And he's got a math background. Let's see, he's got a master's degree in mathematics, Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics. And he went to Syracuse. He's got a certificate of advanced graduate studies in administration. I would have had more statistics for you and everything else. It's just that I wasn't going to announce it, but Deidre thought it was a good idea to share that with you. So, Mike and
So that's done?
That's done.
We'll have a signature
Yeah,
yet.
that is done. There was a process, I believe it was, I think 11 members of the high school staff joined Mike Parent, and they were on the interview committee, and they moved Michael Testa forward. We interviewed him today. We've had extensive reference checks, and so you're going to like him, very likable, approachable person. Comments about the end of the year activity. There's two things I want to mention. Both have to do with the middle school. I talk a lot about the high school. I want to talk about the middle school. I went to a community meeting that for the kids that are moving up from the Mullen School. That was the best. That was a great middle school moment. That was terrific. What they do things and how they bring kids into the fold of being middle schoolers. Can't get better than what I saw. And today, the middle school offered their book awards. They recognized kids for all different subjects, and that was a great moment. It was a lot of kids got different awards, recognized for different things, and it was so tastefully done. My hats off to Barry Hopping, the principal, and all the staff that contribute to this great day. And I just want the last part, Joe Nuccio is retiring after 27 years, Maureen Rico after 23 years, Mike Kent for 12 and a half years being the custodian of the Bresnahan School. And so, thank you to those folks for the years of service. There was a retirement party for Joe and Maureen, and that was really a nice evening, and I want to say thank you to Nan Cook, who's given a lot of her time to the district. How many years did you put down? 11 years. And Nan's moving on, so thank you to Nan. And I want to recognize Bruce, to talk about the school committee summer schedule.
Oh, I thought he was moving on.
We all move on.
Segue.
He's moving back to middle school.
Wrong choice of words.
We have, Steve helped me with this a little bit. When I first started on the school committee, we did not meet in the summer, and then we gradually started to meet in the summer. And then sometimes we've met a lot in the summer, depending on what's going on, and sometimes we decide to meet once in July and once in August. Knowing that we need to lock in our schedules with all kinds of other things that are going on in our lives, I would throw that open to the school committee for discussion, a brief discussion, and hopefully some dates.
I feel, I am quite flexible in the summer, number one. Number two, I do believe the mayor would probably want to be involved in this discussion. Sorry, Charlie.
Why me? Oh, no, you're not getting away with it. You're not getting out of here.
Yes, Stephanie.
I think there's just always work that we have to do. I would, number one, on the books, I'd like to make sure we book the date for the retreat. I guess I'm making an assumption that we're doing another one, so.
August 1st.
When is it?
August 1st.
Oh, okay, August 1st.
So I think
No, you asked us if that,
Okay. So I would recommend that we, I mean, we've got a couple of major projects that are gonna be coming up. And so in terms of just the MSBA updates, in terms of getting a handle on maybe how we want to start the budget work earlier, I think there are some conversations that at least have to take place. So I don't think coming to a lull is a good idea, but maybe perhaps not as frequently. I don't know, it seems like we've been meeting a heck of a lot. So I mean, I can certainly sense that, you know, summer is a nice time to maybe not meet, you know, 5 times a month, like it's been averaging lately, but I do think we have work to do. And I don't think, you know, it's easy to say we want to start the budget process earlier. I don't think we have a set way of doing that at this point, and I think we need to have that discussion as early as possible. That would be my recommendation. So maybe Mondays are just ingrained in my calendar. So maybe we continue through, 2 meetings a month. Or something. I'll throw that out there. I'm flexible though.
Stephanie's got 2 meetings a month, do I hear anybody raising that to 3?
I would support Stephanie's 2 meetings a month, keeping the schedule that we've had so far. As Stephanie says, there's always a lot of work to be done. I think we have a couple of things that we really need to discuss that somehow we haven't found time to really give it the concentrated time in our normal school meeting agendas that I would like to be able to dedicate meetings to. One of them, I think we should dedicate a meeting to preparing ourselves with a communication strategy for the eventual need to go to the voters for the Breslin and the Lamar projects. That cannot start early enough. The second issue that I think we need to discuss is what Dr. O, I think, keeps calling the stuff and not the fluff. We need to talk about our revenue stream and how and when we need to be working with the city to address this as a citywide issue. We cannot continue to pass the kinds of budgets that we have passed again this year. We know the community supports foreign language and wants that. We know they support and want better music and arts education. We know we don't have time enough in our school day at the Knox School to give the kids the kind of education and preparation they need to be outstanding in our high school. And we know all of that costs money. And so I think that's another subject that we can give, that we have not been able to give time to in our regular meetings, other than in the context of the budget. But this is a long-term issue that we need to discuss. And we need to address how do we go from planning a year-by-year reactionary budget to putting forth a long-term financial strategic plan that will outline for the city what our needs are going to be and what we're going to have to do as a city in order to meet those needs. And so subjects like that, I think, are of huge importance. That I would love the summer meetings to continue, but to become a single topic agenda, if you will, or maybe two topics, the SBA building update and this other subject, so that we can touch on these things that are so important. And we really have not had the time to discuss in an open forum, and hopefully bring in people to have these discussions with us, so that we can begin to move forward on these issues.
How available are people going to be in July to be available to have those discussions? Because that's the thing. I mean, I can tell you from past experience a few years ago, we decided as a committee to meet in July. We're going to do all these meetings, and practically every meeting there's a couple of 3 members absent. And I'm just saying that, if people want to grind it out in July, let's do it. But I think we need to establish a scope and sequence of what we're going to do if we're going to put time into those days.
I agree. That I totally agree with you.
Otherwise, I think it may be better spent if we calibrate things toward the retreat and kind of let that piece drive where we want to go moving out from August 1st. But, if there's business that we can take up in July and get it done, I tell you, my experience, the July meetings haven't been productive in the past because a lot of people just aren't available. And I don't know what MSBA does in July. I don't know if they're going to be grinding it out every day, but, people take vacations, people aren't always available.
Stephanie made a proposal, I'm supporting it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just,
If we don't have a quorum, that's great.
In the interest of ending this before midnight, can we just basically put out there what we would support and see if they would come to consensus around something? Okay. Dan, we're flexible and we would like to continue to do this, you guys both would like to meet as
I'd like to
scheduled?
continue.
As scheduled. Steve, you
Yeah,
started,
I think we project out from August 1st, you know, and I think just to refresh the committee, years, you know, in prior times, we would basically be off from July into mid-August, and I realize we have things that we need to think about, calibrate, but I believe assembling those things for some presentation on August 1st and a retreat will help us do that and help us discuss some of the things you mentioned. You want to grind it out in July? My experience in past committees is that not everyone attends, and you don't always get the level of input that you're looking for because people aren't around. You may have key people you want to come here to present, talk about. They're not here. They're not here. But, you know.
sure.
I'm not opposed or for meeting times. I just want the agenda items to be well thought out and valued. I would like to propose one meeting in July to, and I think in the middle of July or earlier in July, to talk about what we perceive as committee needs for our retreat day. I want to have a part in planning that. I don't want it to be imposed on us. And I think I'm going to agree with Steve's point of planning our August meetings based on the retreat. I think we got caught up in the business of the year and the world, and I wonder if there were some lingering things from last year's retreat. We developed a parking lot list. I don't know what happened to that or where it was, but those were topics that we had interest in that weren't appropriate for that day. So I'm going to propose a split: one meeting in August, one meeting in July, our retreat on August 1st, and then 2 regular meetings in August to begin the school year and to pick up the retreat.
Usually thank you. Usually our meeting in August is the one that sort of looks forward and prepares for the coming school year. I like the idea of the second meeting in August. I like the fact that we set the retreat. And I do like the idea of the meeting, single meeting in July. The other option is to schedule 2 meetings in July, and whoever makes it, makes it. But again, I have to. Yeah, and I mean, I do find these agenda items that we never seem to quite get to be very compelling as a need. I think they can be very useful conversations to have, and putting them in a meeting would make them public. So personally, I don't know that I can make 4 meetings this summer, but I would be inclined to go that way.
Define that.
4 meetings, 2 in July, 2 in August,
And the
plus
retreat.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the retreat, I see set back and doing other business. Yeah, so.
I guess what's irking me is that on the evaluation sheet, Mark identified that he wants to reconvene the communication subcommittee and he wants to reconvene the finance subcommittee. And I think in general consensus, a lot of us agree, okay? So in my head, the way this is playing out is if we wait until August to talk about it at the retreat, then we're losing time in getting that committee established and creating some momentum to identify the needs. That's always the beginning discussion. What are we going to do? What has to get done? Doesn't have to be anything complicated, but you have to have discussion about it. And that's why I think that might be something for a topic in July where we could use if we do maybe the 1 meeting. We talk about some items we want to have on the retreat, and then we talk about perhaps revisiting, just very broadly, what would the communication subcommittee look like? What would the finance subcommittee look like? So that we're not wasting, and I don't mean to say that it wouldn't be valuable conversation, but we're not wasting retreat time talking about that. I just don't want to wait until the end of August to get those committees rolling.
So pardon me, but why not establish it tonight? See the interest, establish who needs to be involved tonight, and people can work offline, whatever, between now and then.
I don't know how Mark wants to do that. Like, I don't know if you want to have
The
a
mayor's
discussion.
prerogative to appoint committee members, subcommittee
Yeah,
members, according to
mayor
our
has to
rules.
do that.
Well,
That's fine.
Otherwise, I agree with you.
That'll
Yeah.
wait up. It has to
Well, we
wait
could
up.
evidence interest, right?
And you can get an interest list after the mayor. And that,
Yeah, I mean, that's my
I
big
mean,
concern.
I mean, I'm not trying to,
no, I don't,
but those appointments are generally made at the first of the year too, right? Or can you do them anytime you want?
I can do it anytime you want.
Okay, all right, so then that's really, it's really in the mayor's ballpark, that point, or.
but I think your point is right, Steve. I think if people are interested in one or the other committee, they should make them, that point of view known to the mayor, and you can do that with an email. You don't have to have a meeting for that.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe it's like that subcommittee meeting that I'm looking for. You know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna reestablish those,
Sure.
that's something that, like, a group, you know, 3 people and the superintendent can have
Sure.
their meeting
Right.
between now and the end of August, so we're not wasting time.
Right.
That's what I'm sensing in
Right.
terms of, there's definitely a need. I think the other stuff is also very pertinent, but that's something that we can get accomplished.
Stephanie, did you say you would support one meeting in July to do that and 2 in August? Or are you still, because initially you had suggested.
Yeah, I'm
2 next month.
I'm still 2 meetings, it's just what's ingrained in me. And I do think we have enough meat and potatoes, pardon me, to add to an agenda.
Yeah, I have to agree. Again, I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I don't know whether I've already got driving kids to camp or anything. But my inclination would be to schedule meetings, and if folks who make it, they can make it. You know, clearly, you know, it seems to me that the purpose of those meetings is conversation and dialogue, and not moving things forward for a vote. So I think it would be, you know, they're more conceptual kinds of meetings, which I think are very useful.
So, working meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, she'll have to, you know, sign off on the warrants.
Sure.
Saves us from trips down to the office in the summertime.
I'll drive them around.
What do you think?
I like your idea about a meeting in July to discuss the subcommittees and what it would look like, because I mean, that's what I think, and then what should happen at the retreat. I think that if you try to do it offline, I think what happens is you lose the face-to-face interaction, and you lose the scaffolding of ideas. And so that's why I think it's important to have, in July, it's early, and we should be able to talk about the subcommittees. The other thing is, I know that the mayor will not be available, I think, the last 2 weeks in July. Because we're trying to schedule the retreat, that's why it was scheduled for August 1st. I scheduled for August 1st and didn't tell anyone.
You were keeping us surprised.
Maybe I buried it in the loop someplace, I don't know.
Excuse me,
Let me-
do you have
go
any
ahead.
idea what kind of building community meetings we'll be looking at this summer?
It's all going to be dependent on feasibility appropriations and,
Yeah.
you know,
Every 8 days.
you know, I think that one of the first things that you're going to do is advertise for requests for services for your owner's project manager. And that is going to take 2 weeks in the Central Register, 2 weeks in posting, and then there would be interviews. There's a subcommittee, a selection committee that would be interviewing and making recommendations to the full building committee. So you'd be, you know, gearing up mid to late July, and then from there you'd be conducting interviews and then making recommendations, and then you're hitting the ground running.
I could go for no meetings in July.
You're gonna be, you're gonna be.
We'll win you over, yeah. One other thing though, and I, in reviewing your report on your progress and goals and things, did mention that you're looking to update the strategic plan this summer. Any sense of when that's gonna happen? Because I think it'd really be helpful to have school committee involvement, but especially involvement from members of us who sat on that strategic plan group.
Well,
That's you and me, Steve. Watch
now
out.
that I know that Now they know that you wanted further stakeholders, that changes the dynamics a little bit, because it's one thing to deal with the schedule of, 4 administrators in the office, but in terms of trying to get other stakeholders involved in the schedule. I mean, I would rather see it in July. August gets busy. August is very busy. And I have to get ready for the start of school year. July is,
Which is after Labor Day this year, so you're gonna have a little more time.
You get that first meeting in.
You never stop, Mr. Golden. Pick me up.
Our full professional day, the first day is for teachers, before then.
Okay.
So, I would say the strategic plan, thinking about people's schedules, I would say I would rather do it in July than in August.
So if we're gonna do that, and we know that the mayor is not available the latter 2 weeks, that means we would probably wanna try to do something in the first 2 weeks.
So Monday is the 4th, that's not gonna work.
The 5th I am available, the 6th I am not available, I know that for sure. And the rest of the following week, I have availability in the evening.
Yeah, I have told Mark the only day I'm out of business is that week of the 11th through the 15th. I'm not out of town. I'm out of town for day trips. Like, I have to fly to Chicago, but I'll be back. I just don't know. Like, I might have to literally fly into a meeting on one of those things.
I could do the 5th to the 7th that first week.
Anybody? Yeah, I can do the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th.
So 7th sounds good.
Thursday?
Why?
Lucky 7th.
July 7th, yeah.
7/7 at 7?
7/7, yeah.
Superintendent's not
And
gonna be here on
11,
the 7th.
2011.
7/7 at 7?
The superintendent's not gonna be here on the 7th. Not that we need him to
We
meet
can have a
him.
meeting without him.
I think somebody will be out. This is not gonna be any way, I think. And I
Right.
think it's important for the superintendent to
Absolutely.
be there.
So is Wednesday a better one, the 6th?
No, I can't do this.
Or what is the next Monday?
Next Monday is the 11th, but Stephanie.
No, we can book it. I'll just,
No, I was just thinking if we kept on the 2-week schedule, that would be
Right, and the only
the next regular meeting.
The only problem with that is that, well, does the city council meet in the summer? Yeah, they do. I think they meet regularly in the summer. That would be a city council meeting, but, if 6 of us can make it.
I can make it.
or if we're really running into struggling dates in July, we have a Monday, next Monday. We have another, Monday in June. We can meet on June 27th. I know we were just here. What?
City council feasibility combination.
You want to be there?
Oh, so we're hoping that it gets out of there for that night. Okay.
Yeah. All right, big time.
So the presentation Thursday, I'm looking for a vote.
We gotta fill chambers.
Oh, that, yeah, we know that.
So is the 11th bad?
I'll have to reschedule something,
Nope.
but I can do it. Right?
Right. So July 11th we're on?
Yeah.
7/11.
7, 11, and 7.
This is, casual attire is acceptable, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah, we're on it.
Flip-flops?
Are we doing like
Sure.
6:30?
Flip-flops and neckties.
Baby gavels at home.
As always.
Yeah.
Oh,
boy. Mark, you finished with your report?
Can we do
You
the
done?
consent agenda, please?
I'm done.
Did you have anything you'd like to add to your report?
School choice update, grade 7, 10 slots, grade 8, 6 slots, grade 9, 23 slots.
Can you say that again?
I'm sorry, I'll give you the report.
I was asleep.
Not all have registered, but have been
Oh,
accepted.
you just made everybody in the room laugh. That's great. Everybody just woke up. That's awesome.
They're doing the same.
Okay. That's great.
Well, that's it.
It's okay, Mrs. Kennedy, I was too.
Are we setting our August days now?
Oh.
No?
Let's just have the meetings when they would normally have had them.
Well, that's what
You
I'm
know,
saying.
just-
That's
Those are the dates and.
The 11th is the date, so what are
Yeah,
the
we
two
would-
in August?
I don't know, that calendar Does anyone have a calendar up?
Yes, I do, and actually the 11th wouldn't have been when we would have met, because July 4th would have been a Monday, we would have met on the 5th, which is a Tuesday, and then we would have gone to the 18th. But Donna can't do the 18th,
Right.
so we're bumping up, so that brings us to the one meeting in July.
Right,
I
there it
don't
is.
think due to the mayor's, unless we want to have the second one without Donna. I don't know how everyone feels about that,
Depending on
but
what the agenda is.
the second week, 2 weeks following the 11th is July 25th, which is a Monday night.
Okay. So, we'll do that for,
Well, that's if we have 2 meetings in July, I don't think we've decided that, have we?
I believe we have, but I thought we were kind of, the superintendent's recommendation
Right.
was one meeting.
Just
One meeting in July, we have the retreat.
Right.
And
The
then 2
retreat's
meetings
the
in August.
first.
We could really meet 3 times in August.
Okay.
okay.
And
So
so,
the
can
August
you,
calendar is,
The August calendar, Monday is the 1st, which is a retreat. The following Monday is the 8th,
8th, 15th, and 22nd,
8th, 15th, and 22nd.
and 29th.
I,
Yeah, also
my
it's-
one vacation out of the whole year, like I'm gone that week between the 6th and the 13th, so.
so the 22nd or the 29th is actually.
But I don't know if that jives with, Mark and Deirdre, like, when is better? I'm actually reading on the NSB, let's figure out what we're doing. Okay.
So I'll just.
8/8/8/22? Is that what I heard? 8/1/8/8/8/22?
8/1/8/8/8/22 sounds good to me.
8/22 works.
no 8/29? All
No,
righty
it's too
then.
close to Labor Day and
Yeah. Thank you
the start of school.
for your indulgence.
We're doing the retreat in the same place?
TBA.
Oh, TBA.
Are we having,
Mr.
community conversation at 6:30? Are we having, meeting at 7?
Let's do community conversation, if people are here, and that's the way we planned it. Let's just continue to do that. That's my recommendation.
There goes your 777.
Well, the school committee meets at 7.
11/7.
When we do the consent agenda,
It's 7-Eleven.
it's probably gonna have business here tonight.
Yes, we
We have an
do.
executive session, and we're pushing it off. How do you want to handle the consent agenda?
I want to read them and vote on them and get done.
Let's do the warrants.
I move the following named bills with the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $31,457.34 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm,
Unanimous?
sorry.
Just in case it was, sometimes it is.
I like thinking that.
I'm trying to move on.
I like that.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $256,972.15 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There is a conflict with the mayor. She's not here
Second.
anyway.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
I move to approve the minutes of the Newburyport School Committee from the special school committee meeting of Thursday, June 2nd, 2011.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. I move to approve the minutes of the Newburyport School Committee public hearing Monday, June 6th, 2011.
Second?
Sorry, I'm moving way too fast.
Who seconded it?
I did.
Any
Okay.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We got one more set, right? We got 3 sets or just 2?
Just do it.
So,
Second and
Just
sixth.
read one set.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move to executive session for purposes of contract negotiation. We will return to public session?
Yes, we will return to public session. Thank you. Mark, would you join us?
Who
We need a-
seconded that?
Who seconded that? We need a roll call.
Second. Roll call vote.
Roll call? Okay. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Sweeney? Mr. Menon?
Mr. Bennett?
Ms. Weaver? Ms. Weaver?
Ms. Weaver?
Ms. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Cantor? Okay, Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
You asleep too?
There you go. We're coming back.
We're coming back.
coming
Wait,
back.
there's more.
I guess 3 items that we'd like to deal with. First item was, the superintendent has recommended that the assistant superintendent receive a 1% raise effective July 1st. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Should these be roll call?
Okay, wait a second.
Should they be roll call?
Yeah, roll call.
You want a
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Ms. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Decanter?
Yes.
Mr. Keon?
Yes.
Okay.
Could we deal with the next, as 2 separate motions?
Yep.
Okay. First, having to do with the evaluation of the superintendent and the performance incentive.
I move that we award the superintendent a performance incentive of $2,500 for performing above satisfactory level for this past year.
As per
per
negotiated in the contract, yes.
Second.
Do you have that written down? Okay.
I move
Okay, performance
that
incentive.
we award the superintendent a performance incentive. I'm asleep.
Does everyone else?
$2,500
Okay.
as stipulated in this contract.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
Great, roll call vote.
Second.
Second,
all right, who seconded?
I seconded.
All right, Steph.
discussion. Roll
All
call
right,
vote,
roll
please.
call. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Ms. Holliday? Oh, excuse me. Ms. Weaver, I'm still
Yes.
asleep. Mr. Decanter?
Yes.
Mr. Keon?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a second motion. The superintendent, as per negotiating his contract, has the right to buy back, ask us to buy back 5 vacation days that aren't used. We have such a request.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made that you approve buying back the superintendent's allowing back 5 vacation days from the superintendent as per his contract. Is there any discussion? We have a roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Ms. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Decanter?
Yes.
Mr. Keon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move to adjourn our meeting.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.